put all this money over here and not anywhere else. It doesn't make any sense. As a magnet parent, that's still troubling to me. I turn back and forth. Are you okay? Oh.
Equally frustrating.
Come say hi. See ya. So you're not staying when you did the you can maybe have her switch it if you aren't able to stay.
I brought a cat bar.
I have this much of it. Real here. Just a straight barrel.
Although I realize that if I was really working for Salt and Beer, it's probably my time bar and water. I have some Perrier in there too, I swear to God.
Right, yeah. Maybe not good in the front row.
At least I'm self-reflective.
Well, there you go.
All right. It's my daughter's hard hearing itinerant. I think if I were to do it at 10 at night, it would just further go.
Do you live far from here? Do you?
It's on the coast, right? Like, so it's like Oceanside. This has an Oceanside address.
Yeah. In fact, I live in Oceanside. That's the road. But I don't know how that works. Did someone come on and say that? Oh no, I just have my work. Okay.
I haven't done it men's, but apparently I don't have to do that.
The timely meeting starts. Okay. The timely meeting starts at 8 point. It was like a illustration for how serious.
How are you? Hi, Dr. Doyle.
So last week, or last time, last meeting, my niece was there cheering. So when I was, can I just brag about a BUSD student? She just had her student so she started Doctor does this and this and this, and when it's time to do an internship, call us. So she said, I was just talking about her getting to her. So
great.
Why does one person think about their it's thriving? And to miss the pilot's license at 17. Had she stayed on track, there was a chance she could have gotten it to her 16th birthday. Or her 17th birthday, one of the two. Might have been her 17th birthday. And then she said, actually, I'm taking if I do that, maybe before your kids in an airplane, before I can legally drive them in a car. Because she couldn't drive them in a car for a year. If I was in the car, and I went, yeah, just because you can, you will. And I said, I trust you. I've been up with you. I don't make you distracted. I would not do that.
Great. I could be in New York.
I'd be more nervous for them annoying her than for them not being safe because she's really tough.
Good evening. Roll call tonight. Everybody is here. Cipriano is absent. Cipriano Vargas. Let's stand for the flag salute.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So the public report of the actions taken in closed session. In closed session, the board took action to uphold the superintendent's recommendation that pursuant to Ed Code Section 44929.21, the following probationary certificated employee will be non-reelected in the 2019-20 school year, and has directed the superintendent or designee to send out appropriate legal notice. The vote was 4-0 with 1 absent. Or 4 A's, sorry. In closed session, the board took action to reassign the following employees from their administrative positions pursuant to Ed Code Section 44951, effective at the end of the 2018-19 school year, and directed the superintendent or designee to send out appropriate legal notice. Employee number 19-030501, number 19-030502, and 19-030501. That's twice. So we have the same number twice. number 19-030503. And that was 4 ayes, 0 noes, and 1 absent. The agenda tonight, we are going to pull from the consent calendar number 15K and L. And we are going to remove number 6, the public hearings for Sunshine. A and B, but not C. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Motion by Deb Morton, seconded by Rich Alderson. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Student board members?
Aye.
Presentation, right? So now we're in the public comment section. Any member of the audience who wishes to hold and speak to an agenda item should complete a hold card and present it to the board secretary prior to item 2A before the meeting begins. In an effort to gain as much public input as possible, individual speakers will be limited to 3 minutes or less. A total of 20 minutes will be held for public comments under 6A, and then the remainder will continue at the end of the agenda. Sam Davis. Please stick to your 3 minutes so I don't have to stop you.
I'll try my best. Hello, how are you guys doing tonight? My name is Sam Davis, as you just heard, and I am a property owner, taxpayer, teacher in district at Vista Magnet Middle School. I have children that go to Casita Elementary. And I'm here just on behalf of myself tonight as an individual. I'm also on VTA Executive Council as well, just so that we're clear. I'm actually here because I want to talk about transparency. And so my wife works in a district in North County, San Diego as well. And I've been involved previously, before I got hired at Vista Unified, in other districts. And one concern that I have as an individual is the amount of information that is shared between board members, superintendent, district office, employees, sites, principals, things like that. And after discussing this with board members or previous board members in other districts and my wife, who's on the board of her union in her district as well, one of the ideas that I had was that in other districts, what they do is on agenda items during board meetings, each board member identifies what they've done in the previous month since the previous board meeting in terms of where they've been around the district, who they've spoken to, and some of the positives that they've seen. And I really would love to add that to our agenda. I know we have a lot of information and a lot of work on our agendas each month, and I just really think that it'll be something positive for the community. So I challenge all of you to come to our sites and come all around the district and communicate to the community about what you've seen, especially the positives, because I feel like we need to hear more of those things on a regular basis. And look, I have a minute left. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Heidi, Terry, and is that your own name? I'm sorry.
My name's Heidi Hokai Terry.
Okay, thank you for not making me figure out your middle name.
No worries. It's a hyphenated.
Thank you.
Hello, esteemed board and Dr. Kimball, as well as other district officials. My name is Heidi Hokai Terry, and I am a parent of a 4th grader at Casita and a 7th grader at Vita. Additionally, I work at VMMS as one of the ERMS contracted providers and work mostly with the students in the SEAS program. I have been licensed for 19 years as a marriage and family therapist. I sent some of you an email last week regarding my concerns, and I thank you, Trustee Alderson, for your response. I greatly appreciate hearing back from you. I understand that there are many issues on the table regarding budget cuts, and none of these decisions are easy. I am speaking to you on behalf of the 180 students in this district who receive mental health services through the ERMS program. I am not speaking to you to try to save my job. I will continue to be employed by my company. It just will probably be in a different district. The students that have ERMS therapists that we work with are all on individualized education plans and have already seen the school counselors and the school psychologists for counseling. In being referred to us, these students are needing a higher level of mental health service that is more clinically based to support their educational needs and goals. School counselors, psychologists, and school social workers are all amazing. However, their training is different than that of a licensed marriage and family therapist or a licensed clinical social worker. Also, they have an entire school that they are responsible for, not just 3 to 15 students. As a licensed clinician, us ERMS therapists are trained in mental health issues that are not part of everyday student life. On every given week, I am dealing with a student who is suicidal, self-mutilating, doing drugs, yelling profanity at teachers or other students, stabbing themselves with paper clips or push pins just because it's fun or they're bored, picking a fight to see what will happen, or refusing to go to class because of extreme anxiety. My concern with ERMS counseling being in-house is that 3 counselors and a school psychologist that would be hired would have a caseload to handle, and that it would not be mental health providers that are then handling the cases, and that they won't have enough time in their schedule to be able to meet the needs of the 180 students that are currently receiving the mental health services through the ERMS program. My concern honestly is for the children and that their mental health and their needs be met. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Heidi. Alyssa? Schongard?
She had a family thing come up.
So we have a public hearing for, from the Vista Teachers Association, sunshining their proposal to the district.
Does that mean anybody can speak?
It's a public hearing, I'm assuming, yes.
I noticed that item 6, hi, I'm Pat Emis. I'm a teacher in the district, which means that my union is bargaining on my behalf right now. And I heard after the last bargaining session that we moved from impasse into fact-finding. And so then I'm looking at the sunshine issues, and I'm noticing that we have to bargain Article 16 again. I believe that's the one. And I think that that's simply because the Vista Teachers Association is asking for paid maternity leave. And I think that's all we're hung up on. So in this time of rights, for basic rights for our individuals, I think it's about time that we give the basic right of paid maternity leave to our mothers for an extremely small fraction of our budget. And I know that we can pay for it in many different ways. So I'm disappointed to see that the bargaining team does have to ask for Article 16 again to be one of their proposed sunshine items. It would be nice if they did not have to continue asking for basic mother's right to be with their child for 6 weeks paid maternity or 4 weeks paid maternity. Thank you.
Anybody else like to come to the microphone and speak? Okay, the public hearing is closed. Dr. Kimball's comments.
Good evening. Good evening, Board President Smithfield, board members, student board members. Great to see you all the way down there. Staff and community members, thanks for coming out once again, rainy night. We have an exciting day coming up. Please save the date. April 6th, we are going to be conducting a Proud of Our Public Schools Day in Vista. First annual The purpose of the day is to spread the great word about public schools and all that we have to offer. Over the next month, we'll be working with principals to design and print door hangers. We want to thank Alamosa Elementary for leading the way on this. They designed a very spiffy looking door hanger and inspired the whole thing. We will divide the district along trustee precinct areas and arrange community walks. So we'll be basically getting your steps in, getting out there. We'll start at 9 o'clock and go till about noon at the latest. And we'll be walking areas to get the word out about the great things happening at each school with specifics about each school and maybe some dates coming up at their events and things like that. So we're working out the logistics. We would love for the community to come out and help us blanket the neighborhood. We need all of you. So put on your tennis shoes and put on your Fitbit. And we're going to be highlighting the amazing teaching and learning happening in our schools, and we'll be reaching out to PTA, DLAC, all the various organization staff groups to try to get a good force out there. Special thanks to Alamosa Park for leading the way on that. As you may already know, Alamosa Park's principal, Cindy Anderson, will be retiring at the end of this year, and she has been quite an educational leader and continues to lead us. She is a champion for students and has been her entire career. Please join me in thanking her for her years of service to Vista Unified, and we wish her the best in her retirement. And I'm pleased to announce that Dr. Kyle Ruggles will be the principal at Alamosa Park Elementary beginning in the 2019-2020 school year. He has been an educator his entire career. His experience includes teaching middle school math and physical education, serving as an assistant principal as well as a principal. At VUSD, he has served as the Director of Human Relations, as Executive Director of Student Support Services, as interim principal of Vista High School. He has also previously served as the principal at Alamosa Park Elementary, and we're extremely fortunate that he is returning to the Alamosa campus. So please join me in congratulating Kyle. Kyle, are you here? The one time he's not in the audience. Kyle's always here. All right, so we're going to go straight on to superintendent's recognition. It is my great pleasure to recognize North Coast Church. So where's Connor? Connor, we're going to play a video. I guess I'm supposed to do that before I say where's Connor. So we're going to play the video. Connor, wave at us, Connor, so we'll all be grateful. And here comes the video, and then we'll talk about Connor in a minute.
It's new or used. It is trying to get an instrument into every student's hand that wants one, and it's going all in on arts education.
It is a story that's positively San Diego. 10 News reporter Amanda Brandeis explains a local church just stepped up in a huge way to make that happen.
The power of music.
You walk into fourth period and it's like you forget that you just wrote a 3-page essay.
It can tell a story even if you have no words.
The emotion, how you can portray sadness and happiness in the same song.
Music has been a part of Daniel Jaime's life since he was in diapers.
When I was 2, my family got me my first drum kit. I started taking lessons when I was 6.
An opportunity he's grateful for and wants others to have.
You know, if you start at 18, there's no reason why you can't love it for the rest of your life.
And the district wants to give the gift to all 20,000 students, putting instruments in every elementary, middle, and high school.
I really feel that music has the ability to save lives, and it does.
Band director Eric Wybrather says the district put out a call for instruments, new or used. He's been organizing the steady stream coming in. But the most recent donation took his breath away.
It was really unreal. I mean, it was like a kid in the candy store.
We walked in and it was like instruments stacked up as tall as we were.
North Coast Church asked their worshipers to help, and they delivered. From drum sets to keyboards, pink guitars and amps, brand new ukuleles, tambourines, flutes, and more.
All of a sudden they filled an entire room. I think they might be up to like 1,000 instruments that they've donated.
And they're just getting started.
We'll take brass instruments, clarinets, all the woodwinds, flutes. I'd love to see a few more like oboes. If somebody's got an oboe in a closet, that would be great.
Jaime says each instrument donated is priceless.
Pencil and paper only gets you so far, but an instrument you can write novels.
Amanda Brandeis, 10 News.
Trying to find a place to store all that stuff now.
Yeah, but it's really just such a lifetime thing to be able to give. It's a gift to be able to play any of those instruments. incredible. And a donation drive is happening tomorrow at Vista Magnet Middle School. If you're unable to drop it off and you live in the area, the district may be able to pick up the instruments. The only ones they cannot accept are pianos.
So this story went out. The story went out in the middle of the day of service, and we already had, I don't know how many volunteers, but a lot. We had a lot of volunteers, and it was raining, and we were delivering trumpets brass all to one room, and woodwinds to another room, and percussion, anyway. And so in the middle of all this, we're stenciling cases, and some people are out in the rain, stenciling, including a number of board members. Kids are carrying instruments back and forth, and meanwhile, because the call has gone out, instruments are raining in, So that day, saxophones we don't get so much. Neither do we get trumpets. And both came in that day, which is like, it's like finding a four-leaf clover. Like, we got a cello! Yes! So, and a saxophone, which was gorgeous, and just tons of other instruments came in that day, which is fabulous and confusing all at the same time. So it's great. So I'm going to turn just a little bit so I can talk to Connor too. So forgive my back, guys. So I went to North Coast Church. Just, one of the things we do is we build partnerships. That's kind of our role in the community is build partnerships. So I just went to North Coast Church and met with the pastors and just kind of said, what would you like to do together? And they said, well, what do you have in mind? And I said, well, I don't know. Here's a few ideas. One was, how about an instrument drive? And when Lisa and I were talking about it, I was, well, we'll put them in your office, Lisa. We'll put, stuff comes in, we'll put it in your office. And I started talking to Connor, and he's like, we have 4 U-Hauls coming. So at some point when they're arriving, you can picture a portable building, right? You can imagine what a portable looks like. We filled every square inch, and you couldn't walk through it, and we had more coming. And we were like, oh my gosh, we got to stack better. So it's been quite a week or two, and we are so grateful to North Coast. So come on up here, Connor. So this is Connor, and he's made a lot of the magic happen. So I'm going to read this. Okay. So this is the North Coast Church. Spiritual leader, community partner, and influencer of change, has demonstrated an outstanding commitment to the students and families in Vista and Oceanside through the support of music education in the schools. Specifically, North Coast Church organized a musical instrument drive where parishioners came together to donate more than 900 instruments to the Vista Unified School District. This act of generosity by North Coast Church and parishioners is astounding. The donation will impact students for generations to come and help every student access music in their day. More importantly, the donations will give countless students a love of music that will last a lifetime, as well as inspire others to pursue their goals in science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. North Coast Church exemplifies excellence in community partnerships and is a model for giving back to the community. North Coast Church's passion and commitment to our students and families demonstrates our values of respect, trust, collaboration, and equity. Their community engagement and actions are greatly appreciated and valued, and as such, in my capacity as superintendent, I commend officially the North Coast Church for outstanding service, and Connor for an amazing job as stenciler, organizer, outreach planner, and overall great guy. Thank you so much.
I don't know what I would say. I just appreciate your vision. It's fun to be a part of it, and I really feel like this is something that I'm accepting on behalf of my staff and our team and our church, and we love Vista Schools, so this is a lot of fun. Let's do it again, but not really.
Thank you so much. I just have to tell a little story. So they started calling it Play It Forward, and that's so appropriate. And we had a Play It Forward moment. So we were sorting instruments, and pretty much all the music teachers came out to help, and it was fabulous because our goal is don't let the dust fall on these instruments. They are getting out. We're getting them out fast, and that's part of our commitment. North Coast got them to us. We are not going to let them get dusty. So we got them in. We got a day of service going, and we said, come get instruments and get them going, get them into the hands of kids. Let's roll. And so Dave Fennell was there, and he's helping us sort the violins. He looks at a case. He's like, gosh, this looks familiar. And he opens the case, he looks at the violin, he says, this really looks familiar. He picks it up, he looks at the rosin, and he says, this was my violin 45 years ago. So talking about playing it forward, this is the thing about a musical instrument. They can last 100 years, and they can have 100 kids played them, and it's just the most amazing gift. So yes, please keep giving. We don't mind it raining instruments. We are still short of everything. Honestly, we have so many kids that need them. So please keep it going, and this is fabulous, and we still appreciate North Coast's help. So thank you.
Vista Teachers Association reports from school organization.
I hear they're looking for a place to have a drum club for all the drum sets.
Actually, they just went out today.
Oh, good. They
don't
did find a
have it
home.
yet.
Okay, awesome. Anybody want them in the garage?
Hi, not you. Hello, everybody. Good evening. So I'm going to read to you tonight from an announcement. This is a CTA announcement, my parent organization, but I think it's appropriate for us. It changes the theme a little bit tonight. This is from, this is a CTA note. I was making sure it wasn't the Sacramento Bee. Educators, school personnel, parents, labor partners, and community groups who have been advocating for kids, not profits, by ensuring transparency and accountability in charter schools are thanking Governor Gavin Newsom Tuesday for his signing into law of the SB 126 by Senator Connie Leyva and Assemblymember Patrick O'Donnell. I'm going to paraphrase. So we need to be aware that this big thing is passed. It's a big deal to get SB 126 passed. That's the Transparency for Charter Schools Act. We are under attack by charter schools that wanted to get rid of public schools or at least subvert our system, right? There's a lot of money that gets taken out of public education. You need to be aware of how much money is taken out by charter schools every time a student goes to charter schools. It's huge, right? So we've got that. We also have, there are other issues with the law that continue, this is the charter school law, to make it difficult for students in and out of charter schools. But 4 new proposals would help fix the flawed laws governing California's charter schools. Assembly members, I don't need to say that, have introduced Assembly Bill 1505, Assembly Bill 1506, Assembly Bill 1507, and Assembly Bill 1508. Bottom line is everybody in this room, if they are a fan of public education, need to be aware of these 4 laws and the things that we can do to talk to our California lawmakers to make sure they support these, that put charter schools on the same level playing field that we have. If charter schools do not have to play by the same rules that we have to play by, it's not going to be fair, right? So if we're looking for equity and trust, we need them to have the same accountability that we do. Doesn't mean all charter schools are bad, but there are a lot of for-profit charter schools out there that every time a kid signs up, we lose money way more than just the ADA because they take resources away from our public schools. I hope the school board is aware of this. I'm pretty sure most of you are. But I also just want to take this time to draw our attention to that. So thank you for listening. Thank you for the North Coast Church and the donation. I had a number of friends that are part of that were there helping with the instruments. I hear it was a really good time, despite the rain or in spite of the rain. So thank you very much for your time tonight. Have a nice evening. Thank you.
CSEA.
We have no report.
Thank you, Phil. And DLAC. Yolanda here? Okay. P3 continuing.
Moving right along.
It's a good sign.
It's one efficient board meeting. President Smithfield, nicely done. Good evening, board members, student board members. So I want to thank you all for giving us this opportunity to talk about a program in our district that is near and dear to my heart. Before getting into administration, I taught for 14 years, and a lot of those years were in the early ages, so kindergarten, first, second, and third grade. And one of the projects that we developed with our House of Learning emanates from the foundational part of our House of Learning, which is parents as partners in education. And a big part of that is how do we support parents as the first teachers, and how do we support students before they get to us? And so the presentation tonight, we have a number of people that are going to help present, because my interest is to illustrate not only some information about this project, the P3 Continuum, but also the scope of people involved in this project. And creating a prenatal to grade 3 continuum involves our entire community. And so the purpose tonight is to give you some information, but also to illustrate that we truly have an entire community involved in it. So as I go through it, I'm going to call different people up to share just very briefly their perspective and the value that they and their team are adding to this prenatal to grade 3 continuum and how we can support close the achievement gap before it opens. And so you can see here, I don't want to read them all to you, but the P3 continuum was developed a number of years ago. Laura Cohn's here with me, and she's going to speak in a moment. And I kind of started this with a number of teachers and community members. We have a set of commitments. You can see them. You have your handout, and the folks in the audience can read them. We have values that we've defined. And then on the very bottom, we have our foundations. So families as first teachers, schools and teacher leaders are committed to supporting families, and our community partners add value to the development and the closing of the achievement gap before it opens. Next slide. So why P3 for Vista? We believe, and research has shown, that brain development starts before a child is born, and we know this. And we need to support parents and their families as children develop in the womb and develop as they move toward entrance into kindergarten, which typically is age 5. The second item that we know research says and we believe in is that prevention and an early intervention is the most cost effective, and Laura Cohn's going to talk a little bit about that. And then we also believe that we can help close these achievement gaps before they become so wide that we can't address them, and that many of our students can do incredible things if they have the requisite supports before they get to kindergarten. And those supports just aren't academic. They're social, emotional supports, they're physical wellness supports. There's a variety of systems that we're trying to put into place, and you'll hear from some folks on our team that are really trying to address those supports. But I asked Laura to come to share a little bit of research from a kind of monetary fiscal investment perspective. And Laura Cohn is the director of the Center for Local Income Mobility with the San Diego Workforce Partnership. They're a big partner helping us as we build this P3 continuum. So Laura?
I have a fan! Good evening, everybody. I'm so pleased to be here with this amazing team and talking to you all again, or in the first time for Ms. Alvarado, about this great work that's happening. Oh, Ms. Morton also. So this Vista is really out on the front edge of a movement that has spread nationwide. The idea of prenatal to 3rd grade is even invested in the Every Student Succeeds Act at the federal level, and you all are just really leading among districts nationally in doing this work. I'm here from the San Diego Workforce Partnership because workforce development also doesn't start at age 16 when our federal funding kicks in. It starts in the womb, just like your mission starts before children come to your doors. So we as an organization are really proud to work with Vista Unified to build this continuum of workforce development, if you will. That's not the only purpose of the work that we do together, but that's a really important one, and that's the motivation for our engagement with you. Inspiration for this work comes a lot from Professor James Heckman. He's a Nobel laureate economist who focuses on labor economics. And he was actually engaged to figure out what was the return on investment for job training, the work that is the mainstay of what we do. And there is some return on investment from job training, but it wasn't as large as he anticipated it. And he started looking around, well, what is the best time to invest in human development and human potential? And he kept looking earlier and earlier and found that the greatest returns on what we can do to support our young people and to support our own potential and the potential of our children is at the earliest stages. If we invest, for example, in prenatal development, then we prevent early birth weight babies and learning disabilities that show up when kids come to school. It's a little bit of money in the grand scheme of things that yields a huge dividend, as signified on the Heckman curve, which is what you're looking at on the screen right now. It's become quite a famous representation of the power of early investment, which yields prevention and bigger dividends because you're preventing problems later on than when you're trying to remediate or fix things that happen later down the line. And in an organization that I previously headed up, next slide please, we wondered, well, how do San Diego County's investments in children line up against these critical stages? And unfortunately, we found that it's completely out of whack with the Heckman curve. Instead of public dollars being invested in the earliest time with the highest investment, it's all skewed
appropriately, we're excited about the level of investment in K-12. In fact, we think it should be larger, but according to the Heckman curve, our collective investment in our youngest children should be higher. So that's what inspired our work, and also embedded in our work is the belief that the school district can't tackle early childhood on its own. It's not, you don't have the resources to do that, but also early childhood needs the support from K-12. And when you work together and build a continuum of excellence and quality for young children and their families, from prenatal up into those early grades of elementary school, that's when you'll see the biggest dividends.
Thanks, Laura. Okay, next slide. So just a friendly reminder, the board approved our board goals, and one of my commitments was, as we provide you presentations about our instructional programs, to tie into how things relate to the 3 goals that you have defined for us. So when we think of P3, you're going to hear a little bit more information. We're really addressing all 3 of the board goals. We're addressing conditions before students get to us. We're addressing student outcomes, both academic and behavioral, and we're addressing engagement. How are we engaging parents as partners, and how are we engaging students in meaningful ways? Next slide. Again, friendly reminder, obviously our multi-tiered system of support focuses in 3 categories, or the 3 pillars we outlined at our last meeting: academic, behavioral, and social emotional. I asked both of our behavioral specialists to come here tonight, so you'll hear from Stephanie Rupp and Kathleen May, and they'll give you a little bit of information on how we're addressing not only academic but social emotional. Jenny Pearson will talk a little bit about academics along with Sandra Sekoff. And then we brought our famous Kiki Bispo tonight to highlight some of the great work we're doing with our families. Next slide. Okay, we have developed through our P3, this is our 4th year in P3, a pretty sophisticated P3 framework, prenatal grade 3 framework, but this is a great kind of quick reference guide to think, when you think about our framework, it's many pages long. Sandra Sekoff led the design of it, but this is a great quick reference. I'm not going to go over it tonight, but we did want you to have a copy of the quick reference. Next slide. Oh, so shared leadership. The P3, in order for the P3 to be successful, we need to pull in partners from our community. And so we have our focus group. Our focus group is comprised of representatives from parents, community members, the Vista Community Clinic, Sylvia Alcantar, and others are part of that process. We also have a teacher think tank. They meet once a month. They're exclusively teachers. We have about 20 teachers in this area. Our teachers are focused in the early ages, so we have TK teachers, kinder teachers, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade teachers, and we have preschool teachers at that meeting. So that's a really great group of folks that we like to work with. Our partners at the University of California, San Diego, researchers, so these are neurological scientists and cognitive scientists, actually work hand in hand with them through our International Center for Educational Research and Practice, and we call that the Teacher Researcher Collaborative, and they're doing some fantastic research in the area of how language can impact student development, and also how music, interestingly, can impact student development. So I'll tell you a little bit more about that later. Next slide. So at the last time we met with the board, it was about 6 months ago in the summer, and we outlined 4 areas that we wanted you to hold us accountable for. And so it seems appropriate that we'll give you a report tonight on some of the progress we've made in these 4 areas. If you look, the circles with the green check on it are the areas that we've made pretty significant progress on, and we'd like to highlight tonight. The areas that do not have the green check don't mean that we're not going to be successful, it's just that at this point in time, we don't have information to report to you. Next slide. So with that in mind, I want to hand it off to Ms. Bispo. Tell us a little bit about what's happening with community engagement.
Okay. Thank you, board, for having us today. I'm going to attempt to briefly touch on community engagement and partnerships. So part of what we try to do within community engagement and with parent engagement in regards to P3 is ensuring that we engage the community and families before they're even part of the USD. And that's understanding that as long as you live in the community, you're part of our USD community. Our partnership with VCC allows us to have touch points with families and kind of market together. So VCC knows about our programs. They'll invite me out to even their staff meetings to talk about what we do within Vista so that those staff members, as they work with families, can also talk about the USD, so it's not just dependent on our employees. Part of that is ensuring that we're collectively providing holistic and wraparound services for families, and a really critical component of that is the prenatal services. VCC obviously does a lot in that realm, but they do have space for more families to get involved, and so with their, as they share what they do within VCC, we do the same on behalf of them with families, because we have such critical and very unique and special relationships with families. So, for example, they have a comprehensive prenatal services program that they offer. I think last year they had over 2,000 expectant mothers that they provided services for. They have 8 to 9 healthcare educators who provide very unique services for those expectant parents. But they have the capacity to provide more. And so just as Dr. Kimball mentioned, going out on the street and knocking on doors, I know I've said that we try to do that as a team also. That's hard to identify pregnant mothers. It's harder than we think. And in the critical time frame that we need to provide those services. And so we have a shared collaboration to get that word out. So it's just want to touch on a really critical relationship with VCC. On another side, it's considering the behavior and social emotional aspect of children and the services they need. And part of our relationship with VCC is that VCC also tells us the stories that parents tell them that we don't hear, because VCC is their own safe space. So as an example, parents have shared, well, we learned this with you, VCC, in your programs, such as the prenatal services and how to provide emotional support for our children, but we tend to experience something different in the school district. Not bad, not better, not worse, just different. And so it's ensuring that we're all on the same page as a community. And so that relationship is really important. They help us as much as we're able to help them. We also have partnerships with Jewish Family Services and Palomar Family, who come out and provide counseling services for our families. Again, we only have so much capacity, so many counselors, social workers, teachers, principals. It's really critical that we maintain those community partnerships. And then in district, we have a plethora of workshops. One that I want to highlight, and I believe I have a colleague here, Mario in the back. Wave, Mario, just right there. And stand up and wave. Mario leads WavePack, and he's helped bring in a program called Habits of Mind through Cal State San Marcos. That's an 8-week program that's run on Thursdays. And what's very unique about this program is it's a family workshop. It's not just for parents where we provide childcare, it's for the whole family. Every week we focus on one habit. Families go into their workshop, English and Spanish, children go into their by grade level, and then they go home and they've all learned about that habit. And we've heard every single week how transformative that is for children. And then of course we have our Watchdogs program that focuses on dads and bringing in the strong, beautiful male mentorship across the district. And then of course we have our upcoming 5th annual Early Education Fair. And I have to keep saying this, I know you appreciate this, Dr. Quill. In our first year, we had about 300 people, and I was so excited. I thought we had done such a good job, because I was so fearful we were going to have only 50. And last year, we had over 2,000. We have to move to Vita because we outgrew our space at VAPA. And that is legitimately a community effort that we put on. It's put on in conjunction with EES, our main preschool provider, who will be up here, and I'd like to thank them for all you do, because you help us bring in families again before they're, I don't like to say before parents are actually part of, because we think of our preschool families as part of USD, and that has a lot to do with you, so thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Kiki. She's got great stuff to talk about. We appreciate everything you do with your PACE network.
Is that 2 minutes?
It was about 10. We love you. Okay, so let's jump into our next slide. This is my favorite set of favorite slides. Sandra Seca and Jenny Pearson are going to talk about pedagogy. So what are we doing with our practice, and what is the relationship between preschool teachers and our early ed teachers, and how they work together? So Sandra?
Good evening. It has been many years since I've had the pleasure of addressing the board. I'm Sandra Seha. I'm the principal at Foothill Oak Elementary School. And I have one too. I'm super proud that I get to represent and also facilitate the teacher think tank group, because we know that teachers are where the rubber hits the road in terms of improving outcomes for kids. So we have been able to partner with UCSD in a couple of really great research partnerships with our own USD teachers. We know that there's traditionally a very big gap between what the researchers are doing over at the university and what really matters and makes sense here. So one of our projects that we've been working on with them through our Ed Neuro project is to bring together in the Teacher Researcher Collaborative. They actually came to our meeting, talked with our teachers in pre-K, TK, K1 and 2 and 3 to find out what are the real issues that they're facing right now for which they don't have solutions. And so they have combined, our Teacher Researcher Collaborative has grouped together. They're actually doing research projects with our UCSD faculty on the projects that, on the topics and concerns that really are important to them. Another one of our great collaborative efforts that we have going with UCSD is called the Listen Project. And in this project, we have teacher leaders that have been trained in specific language protocols, so observing what engagement students have with adults, with other students in terms of language production, and opportunities to engage in language exchange. We know that language is the foundation for learning, and so teachers have learned a specific protocol for monitoring and observing students, and the researchers come into these volunteer classrooms and they do these observations and provide teachers with the feedback around what types of language are your students actually engaging within throughout the day, and then teachers are able to come up with some sort of solutions and ideas about what they might do to either increase or target language production and participation. Also in the Teacher Think Tank, we engage in a number of different activities to either get feedback from teachers or to engage them in professional learning together. Some of the examples that things we've done is we looked at the data integration. I forgot the word for a minute there. Data integration. So what a gap we have is with our preschool providers here, we don't necessarily have a clean pass-through of data on what happens with students, which of our students have had preschool, what do we know about them coming in. They're almost like tabula rasa coming in. So we've talked to them about some of the data integration project steps that we've taken and gotten their feedback and input as to what would be important and valuable to them. We've also had deep conversations about what is school readiness, what is a learning continuum, and one of the key things that we just keep coming back to is that in any one of our given classrooms, regardless of the grade that you teach, you have a range of learners. If I'm a TK teacher, I probably have students who are performing at a first grade level and some that are performing at a preschool level. And if we don't have that full range of understanding about what is that learning progression and how do I assess it, and how do I then, what are the best developmentally appropriate teaching practices that I can use, then we're not really ready to meet students where they are and provide them with personalized learning. So we've talked about the importance of the continuum, and we've actually begun with the expertise of Jenny Pearson to develop some draft learning continuums together, and I'm going to have her share a little bit about that work.
Good evening. My name is Jenny. It's not was it me? I am a teacher on special assignment in the innovation department, and one of my roles is to co-facilitate the P3 Teacher Think Tank with Sandra Seha. And this year we've really been focusing on pedagogy, so having really rich conversations about best instructional and assessment practices in relation to early education. And as Matt mentioned, in this P3 Teacher Think Tank, we have preschool teachers sitting side by side with TK, K1 and 2 teachers. You can imagine how rich those conversations are and what a great opportunity it is to vertically articulate, not only in our system, but with our preschool partners. So we've been digging deep into what has been happening in preschool, and then also looking at our California state standards and frameworks to understand not only where students are coming into our system, but where are they going and what is the expectation from the state. So in that work, we have been building what's called learning continuums or progressions, sometimes called trajectories. There's a visual on the slide that you have in front of you, and what a progression is where a group of teachers get together and break down a standard into all the incremental steps that it takes to reach that standard by the end of the year. So the benefit of doing this work is that we're making learning really visible. We're creating a visible learning pathway so that teachers and students can better understand where they are on the continuum and how to move forward. There's another added benefit of creating learning continuums or progressions, and that is that conversation, that side-by-side collaboration with teachers. I would say that the process has been just as beneficial as the product. You do have one example of a draft that we have created for you from Phonological Awareness Standard for you to reference. But we are definitely in progress with building out these continuums in the Teacher Think Tank group. Next slide, please. I also wanted to connect with you a little bit about how this work in P3 is spreading to other sites in the elementary school world. So in the collaboration wheel, teachers have grade level time, and several sites have sort of organically decided that they are interested in developing learning progressions themselves in their grade level teams. So we've built in time for them to do that. And this has coincided with other professional learning around best practices in instruction and assessment. Because at the end of the day, we know that what teachers do with students is what matters most. So all of our work is really revolving around what teachers are doing with their students. And the reason I'm sharing this with you right now is because we've seen some really remarkable results already. So some of the images that you see on the slide are from a kindergarten class in our district. And this teacher had used the learning progressions with her students in conjunction with all those really evidence-based, research-based practices that we talk about. So in the bottom left, you'll see two kindergarten students, giving each other high-quality feedback on their writing. I mean, my jaw was down to the floor when I was in this classroom. It was absolutely amazing. On the top right, you see a student in kindergarten as well, using a progression to determine what he's already successful at and where he's going next in his learning. It's absolutely remarkable. These images come from a video that was produced last year, so if you have some time, I encourage you to take a look at that video because you'll get to hear teacher voice, administrator voice, and most importantly, student voice. At this time, that concludes my part, and I'd like to share now with Stephanie Rupp and Kathleen May.
Can I ask some questions? It's for you and
Not
Sandra.
off the hook.
For you and Sandra, I'm
Sure.
sorry, because it is a long report, so I'm going to tackle this. I really needed this in my heart tonight. Thank you, guys. Okay, so just a quick question. So right now, I just need to picture this. We have the think tank, and you guys meet and do your discussions, and then they're taking it back to the sites. And they're, so you talked about the listen, and so we're actually using those things right now with our students in this district.
So there are some aspects that yes are happening real time. So the UCSD projects are happening in our classrooms with our teachers right now.
So can I back up for a little bit? When we first, I think kind of when we first started this, and we met with all the stakeholders in UCSD, and we talked about them helping us to study the brain development and everything. Is that a takeoff from where that started? Is this a takeoff from where that started?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, that brain development is happening real time in our classrooms as we speak.
So now it's in the classrooms. Good job, you guys.
And the rest of the P3 work that we're doing is really just trying to develop a group of teacher leaders so that when we are ready to branch out, we really want the teachers to be leading the other teachers. That's the best way to go about it.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, I want to introduce Stephanie and Kathleen as well, so Jenny's not the only one. One of the big points that we got, this is a teacher-generated activity, and this is our P3 is about teachers and about students and how do we bring them together and help them in meaningful ways. And when we met with them originally, Laura and I and others, the #1 area of focus was not academic that we got from teachers. It was social emotional and behavioral. And anyone who was taught early education knows this, that that's the key to successful academics. And so we are very proud that Stephanie and Kathleen have been with us all the way, and we will always include them in conversations about how do we improve students, how do we close the achievement gap in meaningful ways. So I just wanted to introduce both of you because we were proud of you being part of this. Come on up.
Thank you. Good evening. As we've emphasize the focus of the P3 initiative is to really look at the whole child. So not just academics, but behavior and social emotional learning as part of the early learning process. So the involvement of the behavior team really is to focus on 4 main areas to facilitate the smooth transitions for our early kids, or our young kids coming into Vista schools for the first time.
And as you can see on our slide, that early intervention of proactive behavior support ensures a smooth transition and increased achievement, as well as boosts common understanding of how emotions and social relationships drive learning. All means all, provides equitable access for all students, and sets up systems of support for social, emotional, and behavioral needs. This is good work.
Thank you. Okay, so Kiki, back by popular demand, you do not have 10 minutes.
I know, 1 minute.
Okay, come on up, 1 minute.
1 minute and a half. Okay. So kinder registration is officially open as of February 25th, and schools have been busy. I've talked with the team, and in fact, a lot of them missed a team meeting because they were at schools helping parents, so that's a good problem, was not a problem. With outreach, I've mentioned in the past, we do presentations at MAC and the full day EES sites, and then liaisons will attend their PACs, their Parent Advisory Committee meetings with EES at their sites to talk about VUSD. So currently, we're trying to plan a couple days where we actually do registration events at the EES sites with their families, specifically at the full day sites, so those are out in the community, and then also at Innovation, so that as parents come and pick up their children, they can register on site for kinder, so they're in the system nice and early. And part of that is making sure they get their name on the Jumpstart list, which Rafa will talk about in 1 minute. I do want to refer you to the map that I've inserted here. This is the late kindergarten registration map from last year. So these are kindergarten students who enrolled after the start of the year. We use this as essentially inspiration to make sure that we're getting out in the community and outreaching earlier to get children enrolled, not just by the start. My ears are excited. My earring. Not just by the start of the school year, yeah, but before the summer, so that they do get into Jumpstart. So we're using these maps, and we have, this is all district, but we have maps for every single elementary site with their late kinder students, so that we can really identify where in the community should we be honing our outreach efforts. Steve Davis, who's in measurement and monitoring and helped design these maps, he's creating updated maps of current registration so we can see where we're at now to create new kinder reg events, because in the last year they weren't effectively attended, so we want to make sure they're effective when we're using funds appropriately.
Thank you, Kiki.
That's all.
Now we have the most interesting man in the world.
No commercial here. Good evening, board. My name is Rafael Lavida, principal at Grapevine Elementary, and it is an honor to share with you some information about our Jumpstart program here in Vista. First, I would like to give you a little bit of background on the idea behind Jumpstart. In schools like Grapevine Elementary, we know that about 50% of our students entering kindergarten have had no formal preschool experience. Out of those students, a high percentage of them are English language learners. Some of them are newcomers. We also know that a high percentage of these students come from socioeconomic disadvantaged families. So this automatically puts them at risk as they enter kindergarten with needs in oral, language skills, social skills, among others. So the idea behind Jumpstart is to offer a 2-week program in school for students entering kindergarten with a focus on academic readiness, behavior support, and social emotional support. It is for many of them a first exposure to school environment, routines, transitions, etc. It will offer also a support for parents of these Jumpstart students at the same time the students are attending the sessions. And so in collaboration with our community liaisons, we have partnerships with Vista Community Clinic, Palomar Counseling, among others, to provide resources and services to our families. A little bit of history about this program is we started in 2017. And we started with 3 schools: Olive Elementary, Grapevine, and Foothill. In 2018, we had Grapevine, Maryland, and Foothill offering this program. And for 2019, we have 7 schools offering this program, and there will be Beaumont, Bovier, Foothill, Maryland, Grapevine, Hanalei, and Bapa. The logistics of the program will be offered from July 29th to August 9th. The hours will be from 8 to 12, with 8 to 11:30 students being in class, and then will be offered free lunch from 11:30 to 12. We hope to have up to 60 students per site. The focus, again, will be academic readiness, behavioral support, and social-emotional support, as well as learning the basics from transitions, expectations, and routines. We will also offer academic assessments to evaluate readiness. And this program will offer the same academic and social-emotional model for all 7 sites, with unique differences between sites or among sites. For example, at Grapevine Elementary, we hope to have a dual immersion Jumpstart together with an English-only Jumpstart. So we hope that actually we can make an impact again, offering Jumpstart to our families here entering kindergarten in Vista, that will help close the academic achievement gap. So thank you for this opportunity to explain Jumpstart here in Vista.
Thanks for coming, Ralph. I appreciate it. So we're almost finished. Again, we're taking a little bit more time because this age of our students is probably the most important age in our education. Did you have a question?
I do have a question.
Sure.
In
For
terms
Rafa?
of,
For Raphael?
for anyone, it's about the Jumpstart program.
Great.
How is it decided who gets to attend? Is it, I mean, obviously the target group is students who don't go to preschool, but can a parent say, a volunteer, I really want my kid to go even though he or she has gone to preschool?
We do. So we open it up to any incoming kindergarten. So it's only for incoming kindergartners. Obviously our focus are students who haven't had any preschool, but any incoming kindergarten can attend at those schools, at those identified schools.
And does it have to be by their neighborhood? I mean, can they go to any school, or is it?
Yeah, it's a really great question. We thought about how to approach that, and at this point in time, our focus is on our highest need schools. Those are the 7 schools we've identified. And much deliberation with the teachers themselves was that they felt that it's most impactful when the teachers that are going to be teaching them are running the program. And so we were thinking about allowing all students to come into it, but after deliberation with the teachers, they felt that it was better for them to focus on the students coming into their school. So at this point in time, that's our focus, but it's a great idea, and we've had that conversation.
Last one, what's the ratio?
The ratio is less than 20. We typically are, I mean, we focus on 20-to-1, but typically it's 17-to-1, somewhere in that category. All right, so we're almost finished. We can't have a conversation about prenatal in grade 3 without our fantastic partners in preschool. There's a huge number of students, and the president and CEO of Education Enrichment Systems, Robin Layton, and Celine Karinsma are here to tell you a little bit more about it.
Thank you so much. So, where's our slideshow person?
There it is.
There we go. There's the chart. Okay, I love this chart. Some people on my staff don't, but I love this chart because, well, first of all, I've been here longer than the chart.
Speak to the
microphone.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, much better.
Lower it more? How's that?
Yep.
Okay. Anyway, so this is our growth chart, and we actually are a nonprofit. We've been around since 1979, actually in Vista, serving about 100 students, 130 students Okay, how's that?
That's much.
About 130 students. We actually rent space from the Boys and Girls Club of Vista. And about 10 years ago, I met this fine gentleman, Dr. Doyle, and Donna, and we created a partnership, thanks to you all. Some of you were here, I think Rich might have been here. And we now started with 132, and we are now, over the years, you can see we're on 11 of your elementary school sites, serving preschool age children. And we also, during this partnership the last 10 years, have opened up 2 new full-day child development centers. So all of our students are funded, the tuition is funded through the California Department of Education, and they have 2 goals, parents earning and children learning. And so we're really proud to say that when we opened up well, first of all, Gilmore opened up in 2010, but last year we opened up the one at Innovation, serving 60 students, and we were full in a minute. Most of them coming from the part-day centers, but those are full-day, year-round centers. So we're very proud of our growth, and also just want you to know that approximately every year in the last 10 years, we're giving you about 500 students transitioning into elementary school. We're very proud of that as well. And with that, I'm gonna have Celine, our Vice President and COO. I also want, just really quick, I have to give a shout out to the second row here. Our CFO is here. We also have a parent liaison team. Our education coordinator's here. We have 2 directors here. So thank you for coming. There's more things we want to work with. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm going to talk about this quality score of 4 and 5 out of 5. So when you walk onto one of the L11 elementary schools or 3 of our schools in Vista, if you were to walk onto Beaumont or Beaubier, in the principal's office you would see a QPI tier rating. And it's either a 4 or a 5, and it's not easy to get. These ratings come from hold on, it's really long. Quality California Counts Quality Rating Improvement System. And here in San Diego, it's through the Quality Preschool Initiative. And it's a tiered point system. We work really hard to get these scores. We work with the children with their desired results. So we assess the children. We help the families with vision and health screenings, hearing screenings. We assess the children for referrals, and we work very closely with Rachel at California Avenue for those. A lot of the difference that you'll see between the 4 and the 5 seriously is the difference between a bachelor's or a master's degree for our lead teachers. And so, and sometimes it's not even the degree, it's just a matter of specific early education units. And so we're very proud of those. We post those with a lot of pride at the schools and in the principal's offices. One of the tier components for that quality rating is our 1-to-8 teacher ratio. So we have a teacher and 2 assistants in every single classroom. That really helps us with personalized learning and engagement. And what Sandra was talking about earlier is that language and language acquisition. There's a lot of joyful talking going on in all of our preschool classrooms. Another thing that we're really proud of is that 80% of the family involvement, each of our sites, 80% of all students are involved, or 80% of their families are involved somehow in an event throughout the year. And I want to thank Kiki's team, because some of those events are between the elementary school and the preschool. And so when there's an event on the campus, those family liaisons are really helping get the word out for those activities. But 20% of our families attend. We create a workshop series every year. It's either been Let's Read Together or Positive Parenting, and the parents are really committed. It's a 2-hour, 3 weeks in a row, and they attend these, and so.
And just want to give a shout out to the fact that we've been noticed in our county with this great model that we have here of a public-private partnership. And because of that, our organization did receive this fantastic grant through the San Diego Foundation over the next 5 years to look at expanding services here in Vista. And so we're really looking forward to that. And the other part of the grant is to increase our parent engagement activities, so that's why we're able to have a parent liaison now here in Vista, and offer also to hire some staff to help us support with our special needs students. So we're very excited about our growth.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so bringing it home. Next slide, please. Thank you, ma'am. So I wanted you to meet the people that are doing the work. I would love to come back. I know we went over our time, so you'd probably never invite me back. But I know I would love to come back and talk about academics, because I can fill a slide deck of 35 slides just about the academic impact. But just for the sake of argument, I wanted to throw up one slide. So left-hand side of the slide, foundational steps. If you look, this data is showing information only on first graders and just first grade language learners. So this is just one small subset of the students that are served with our P3 initiative. And if you look, discipline is, when you compare it to typical peers, is actually down. Incidences of discipline is down 35% when they participate in preschool. Another example is the LPAC test. That's the English Language Development Test for English learners. And the students who participate in preschool programs, their scores are 39% higher. And then the last one is the iReady. That's the new diagnostic that we use. Again, for first graders that are English learners, their phonological awareness scores is 33% higher than their typical peers who haven't participated in preschool, and their vocabulary is 10% higher. And then to the right, just a friendly reminder, we talked about this, Laura and I, back in the summer. When our students reclassified in 2017, 29% of our English learners that were in first grade were reclassified. As an example, prior to our preschool partnership with EES, literally 0% of our first graders reclassified back then. So it's really an interesting data point. Next slide.
So before you go on to the next one, I will say, before I did this, I have the benefit of receiving your students from preschool as a kindergarten teacher, and amazing. You just open up a whole new world for them, what you send them to us in kindergarten, so thank you.
We love it. Last thing before we go to the next slide, Jan, just leave it there just for a moment. I do want to point out, so Robin kind of went over it quickly, but their organization just a few months ago got that $1.5 million focused exclusively on Vista students so we can grow our programs. That's a result of this partnership. They don't pass out $1.5 million if you don't have a very comprehensive program that addresses all the elements what's in place. And interestingly, we just got notification today that the researchers, so we talked about that Teacher Researcher Collaborative at University of California, San Diego, they just got another $150,000 literally today from the National Endowment of the Arts to continue the research they're doing on how the impacts of music education and early education can enhance the cognitive growth of students. So that's happening on a daily basis. They don't hand these things out if you don't have a structure in place. And so as you build structure, you actually bring more funding into the school district and more partners. Last slide. A lot of that $150,000 pays for the Teacher Researcher Collaborative. Yeah, but it's important to note, it runs through UCSD because it's a research grant. I was asked to put a slide up in terms of its impact on budget. So I put this together. The P3 Continuum is run through our first strategy, Strategy 1. I won't read it to you. It's Action Plan 3, if you want to know specifically. And as it relates to the funding conversations you had and the cuts that you approved at our previous meeting, all the elements of P3 would be cut, or have been cut at this point in time.
But clarify, I want you to clarify.
I will, I'll point out. I'm answering the question. Someone asked me the question, so I'm answering the question. And so, as Dawn and I chatted with you at the last budget meeting, we are serving 2 masters in this district. Every district must serve 2 masters. Master number 1 is sending to the County Office of Education the second interim budget report that needs to equalize in terms of our positive certification. That needs to happen this month coming up. Dawn, I think we'll talk about it tonight, if I'm not mistaken. The second master we serve, that's due June 30th, is the Local Control Accountability Plan. And so if we make cuts as an organization to fulfill our obligation to submit this second interim budget with a positive certification, it doesn't mean that we can't address gaps that those budget cuts may have created before we certify our local control accountability plan in June. Does that make sense for folks? Don, anything you want to add to that?
You did a very good job.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
Maybe I should be the CBO. I'm joking. I don't want that job.
Be careful what you say.
I'm not gonna, I don't think so. Pretend I didn't say that. I really enjoy my hair.
Okay, so I have a question on this, because you just kind of knocked me off my chair here, Matt. We made these cuts.
Well, those were part of the process.
So where were they? Because I don't remember cutting teacher supplies, I don't remember cutting, was this in our line item list, or was this when you went through the blueprint and crossed?
We went through the blueprint and crossed.
But we did not agree on cutting those.
You did when you shifted the positions from, it was on the list. When you shifted the position into the blueprint, that has to happen so that we can accommodate those positions.
But we didn't say to accommodate those positions,
Then we're not,
this
then
is
we
what
go
we needed
qualified.
to get ready
Then we go
for it.
qualified.
We
Okay.
asked the question, I asked the question. If we move things over, what are we giving up?
And I shared that with you. It was in the budget documents on the 21st of February. I shared those documents with you because that's what we had to move.
So all those cuts that were made out of the blueprint, that you cut, because we never cut them. We saw the list that you gave us from the blueprint.
Yes, ma'am, you did. But as I said that night, and I'm saying tonight, and I have said previously, between the time of March and the time of June, we adopt the budget and we get the community input and the priorities are set by you, the board, we can adjust what we have to make. These are in 1920. We haven't adopted that budget and we're not going to until June. We have to make the cuts so that they appear, that they have to be actual. The county has to believe, that has to understand that you, the board, are doing your fiduciary responsibility and making that happen. So we did that in this case right now, and that's why we're going to have a positive certification on our second interim budget report.
Well, thank you for the positive certification, but I think there was not transparency in this process at all. Not from the very beginning.
I disagree with you, Ms. Morton, because I was very clear about the documents I shared with you and the need. You don't shift something if there is no money there. I am sorry you don't feel it was transparent. I put all the documents out as best I could.
Okay, so here's my confusion. Okay, take a breath, please. So I had asked you if you were giving the tab, so let's talk about when the blueprint first came up. We came to do budget talks. I said, well, wait, we haven't looked at the blueprint and it says the blueprint drives the district. So we had that talk. I said, somebody needs to go back and look at the blueprint and pull out the fact, okay? Things we pay for that don't affect the kids, cell phones and things like that. That weekend, I noticed you were online 24/7, going through the blueprint and doing, I'm sure, what you were asked to do, which meant taking it and crossing everything out in certain departments. So I thought I had asked, and I thought I understood the answer to be at the last meeting, that because we went through those line items, we weren't touching anything at this point and pulling any of the items that were crossed off that weekend to be cut. Because if that were the case, instead of just going through the line items of the districts saying, okay, here's what we suggest you cut, I would have continued the meeting to say, let's go through that document. I would have pushed to cut the $14 million, but I was under the impression we weren't going to do anything with that document until the whole process was finished. And now I'm being told I cut this. So I did cut it.
Yes, ma'am. Because I had to move the salaries in that we said that we were doing the funding shift.
No, I got you have to.
I understand you had to move the salaries in. I specifically asked because I was concerned that our whole room one, strategy one, which is parent engagement, and this, which in my mind of being an early childhood teacher in an underperforming school for a whole lot of years, are the two most important areas that we need to give our students in this district. And so when I saw that they were all cut out, that gave me great concern. And then I would go to the next room and there was nothing cut out, which to me was further away from the kids. So I would have pursued that conversation if I understood. My fault for not understanding it correctly, but I just want that for the record. I did not understand that.
And I agree with what Ms. Beal just said. I didn't understand what exactly was happening. Otherwise, I would have stopped it and said, no, I don't want the cuts out of P3. That hurts students directly. I'm feeling like this whole thing was not done very well. I'm feeling very upset right now. I don't feel like I have been given the correct information at the right time. In order to do this, I feel like this is terrible, absolutely terrible.
Can I say something, Don?
Yes, please.
So I've been working on the LCAP since the LCAP was invented in the state of California. Part of this process, the intent of the LCAP is to support students, our highest needs students, so I understand your passion for P3, I'm passionate about it as well. Don and I have worked together on this since the beginning. I'm confident that we can work with our superintendent and get the feedback from the community and ensure that if the board feels this is an important part of our House of Learning, our blueprint, that we can build this in so that the budget conversation you will have in June, which is the official budget approval for 2019-20, will reflect your interests and desires. And so while I can't change your level of frustration now, I can reassure you that Don and I are committed and will work with our superintendent to make sure that elements of P3 are intact, if that's the pleasure of the board. So I just want to reassure you that we have the ability, and Don and I work very closely together. We will make sure that that happens. We have a process in place. We believe it's a very transparent process in terms of parent feedback. I attended 2 of them today. One of them was the Vista PTA Association, and we know that that's a theme that's already coming to the surface, early education.
So if we just cut that last month and we don't bring it back, it's gone.
No. Okay, let me tell you. Okay, so here's the process. We haven't adopted the budget. We have those cuts in there. We're gonna rewrite the blueprint based on the fact that you guys just approved goals. We've got 3 goals, they have a whole bunch of different metrics. We're rewriting the whole plan. During that rewrite, we will incorporate, depending on the input from you and the community, which will, and obviously this is a very passionate, powerful thing that you guys want to see happen for our students, it will be in there. Along with some other things that we have to maintain that you guys incorporate. At the end of the day, when we adopt the budget, we're gonna have $14.7 million in cuts. And we did talk about the fact that we were going to reach out to the community, because you guys rightfully so pointed out to us that we hadn't engaged the community. And Matt and I had already committed and agreed to that was one of the things that we were doing next.
For which we've already started.
Yes.
Okay, so just basically wait and we'll fix this.
We are absolutely going to fix it.
Okay.
Donna, let me,
Thank
you know, as you know, I was the one board member that didn't vote for this, and partly, and this is, I don't want to sound arrogant, but I've had a experience with budget in my career, and so, and I think we need to say it in the simplest of terms. We are now having a budget gimmick to get us to qualified by doing this, and then we're going to rework this in June after you get parent input. And I'm pretty certain that no parent input is going to come back and say do away with P3. I can be pretty confident of that. And so that's a part of the reason that I didn't vote for it the last time, was that we're going to kind of trick the county that we're okay.
Oh, no, we're not, I don't like to use that word trick.
Okay? I know you don't, but
It's not a trick.
I used to work at their level, I get it. So I'm just saying, so I understand, but I think for the other board members who are feeling that they didn't maybe totally understand what the shifting of the budget piece was going to be, you know, an analogy might be for you folks that, you know, I'm going to get a loan on my house, so I pay off my credit card, borrow money from my brother-in-law, get my loan, and then re-up my credit card and give it back to them so they don't know I spent the money. I mean, it's a little bit like that, and so again, I understand what the process was, but I don't disagree that, you know, maybe some more explanation would have been helpful. But
we need to clarify. I think we need to clarify. I don't see it as a trick, Corley, at all. You know, so basically, we have a list of things we plan to cut. If we don't want to cut those things, we need to sub them for other things. So our full intent is to cut exactly what we said we would cut. It's just that we may swap things on the list, which is different than a shell game. Do you understand the difference?
Okay, so then when you say that, I felt comfortable from Donna and Rich, but you just kind of scared me again because we did technically cut it, but we didn't intend to cut it. So when you say we cut this and then we can do whatever to bring back, my point is some of us, at least I'm hearing, didn't intend to cut these services out of our blueprint.
I understand what you're saying. So given what you're saying, we go back and we say, okay, if it wasn't your intention to cut that and you would like us to continue that, we need to find something else to trade it for, that we are cutting. Does that make sense?
So when we find those other items to cut, then that'll be with the input of the community. That'll be those decisions on what to swap will come from those meetings that we have with our stakeholders.
Do you understand how much money we're talking about? About $110,000? So, I mean, the support, Peak 3 is being really done by a lot of our staff members. And so, you know, the cost that we have is not like millions of dollars. So it is a very viable way to continue to support this as we get that input and the suggestions from our community.
And that $1.5 million grant, can that be used for it's for new preschool programs?
And it's only through it.
It's to help, like, for example, how we did innovation, it's to help with the funding of, to renovate. So we have state operations pays for the school computer tuition, but our organization pays for the renovations of the spaces. And it's also for 2 to 3 staff members. And it's over a 5-year period.
So for new implementations of new preschool programs, not for existing ones that we already have.
Correct. The idea is to increase capacity.
Thank you.
And the money is with Ed Enrichment, not with the district.
Okay.
Ms. Smithfield, can we take a little break?
Sure, 10 minutes, you guys, and then you're next. Thank you for being patient.
Oh, oh.
Cannot.
Got a little loud, I know.
Good to see you. See you. You here to support or?
I'm here to talk about the cell phone.
Yes. Yeah?
I don't want it, so.
You don't want it gone or you don't want it?
I don't want it. I don't want Nixie gone. I like my
Oh,
Nixie.
it should not be gone. No.
So, I'm
I
hoping.
don't know what plan B is, but you know, if it's working, don't change it, right?
That's in my
Don't-
speech.
If it's working, there you go.
Don't, if it's not broken, don't.
If it don't, exactly. No. I'm trying to see that. Maybe it's the financial or people don't have to that, right? Not because it's not working. It has to be financial. All right, let me know.
I will.
How it works, okay?
Yeah.
Good to see you.
You too. Thank you.
Okay.
If you get right here, I will be.
We're going to show a video right now.
Oh, okay. Do you not want the video?
You can do whatever you
Oh, okay. Are you next up in line? There's some notations if you'd like to add to the
Oh, man.
Wait a minute.
You know you're on fire when you're here. You're on fire.
No.
So how is Clayton getting any bigger?
I will take your feedback.
Jeez, I know. I will.
Because they didn't have snacks. Snacks, he both got happy. Very much looking forward. All right, good luck.
I'm fixing the dishes.
She changed the colors.
is 8 o'clock, I figure we'll keep you guys here till about 9:30 with our presentation, if that's okay.
It's important.
Starbucks? Absolutely. My name is David Rios. I'm the principal at Alta Vista High School and Major General Murray High School. I have Michelle Snyder here, the lead teacher at Vista Visions. And we have a video for you. It's about 6 minutes long, again, about an hour and a half long, to show you about some amazing things that are happening in our schools and amazing things in possibly providing some options for our students in the future.
I have tissues in case anybody needs them.
We also just want to thank the people that came to support both schools tonight. We have a couple of our teachers from Alta Vista High School, Julie King and Joanne. We have some parents from both schools, the Leahy family and Nicole Trusette. And we also have Vista Visions teachers, our small but mighty staff, Matt Greenlee and Jesse Estrada here. So this is about two small, very special schools that have both been very vulnerable in the last few years. So we'll let the video speak for itself.
earlier somebody was talking about a piano. Yes, we will take a piano. And if you guys notice, there is a piano and their VVA is working on an amazing project, and we would love to expand that project. You guys saw a couple things on there that really hit home. School differently. We know that the world of education is changing as we're sitting here talking into this microphone. And if we don't try to figure this out quickly, we are going to be left behind. We know, we all in this room know, everything's predicated on a budget. However, when we are looking to do something for kids, I worry about the budget, but we're just going to have to figure it out together. And that's kind of our message here, is school differently. You guys saw the hashtag, and you'll start seeing that all over the place from the two of us, from you guys, because we're going to ask the community start doing stuff differently for our schools. But one thing about it is, again, it's about the children that we serve. And no matter what we do at our schools, and we're talking about our schools here, we're going to do it together. And I think that's the important piece, looking and moving forward. We are going to do this together. It's an amazing time in education for us. And I know, again, going back to the budget, but you know what? I kind of say, screw it, let's figure this out. It's our job, you know, it's our passion, it's our life, it's what we do. And I look forward to working with you, but I also look forward to working for the kids. And I appreciate you guys' time tonight. Thank you.
And I think just one more. Sorry, I just wanted to say one more piece about our two schools together. Anyways, we're two small schools, literally saving lives. Any board members that would like to just hear some student stories at some time, we have some incredible stories just from this school year alone, and it makes my heart so happy to know that we're helping these kids and families. And the staffs that we have at both schools are amazing. And our thought is really to stabilize both schools, to bring us together so we can share resources. I don't know if you know, but at VVA, our support resources are all at the Alta Vista staff right now. So our registrar is the Alta Vista registrar. Our attendance person is the Alta Vista attendance person, a counselor, social worker, all of that. So we're working together now from across town, and it's a little challenging. So bringing together to reimagine what we can do is amazing. We have some definite outside the box thinkers on staff as well.
I'm sure you picked this up from the presentation, or I hope you did, but we're not asking for any action from the board. This is a period of discovery. The groups are thinking together, talking together. They are so passionate, these people. We put them together in a room. I can't even imagine what, I think their room probably starts spinning, but it's an amazing group, and they've asked for the latitude to talk to each other and to work together and see what they can develop together. I think it's exciting, so appreciate you listening to their report.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for doing this. I think it's very exciting, so thank you.
Rosemary, may I? Okay. So I had the opportunity to visit Alta Vista. My visits have been limited because of my job. I teach first grade, but I spoke to some phenomenal students there. And two young ladies took me around the school, gave me a tour. And one of the young ladies, she's an artist, and she talked to me. She said, she looked at some bare wall. She said, I would really like a mural on that wall. I've been wanting a mural there for a long time. So then I know Sarah Spinks, she's an artist in Vista. And so I was thinking that, maybe it would be a good idea to have both schools collaborate on an idea and collectively to build community as they think about the possibilities of sharing the campus and what they would like to see on that wall. And it would be great for building trust and relationships with one another. So I'm just throwing that out there. Obviously, I can't make that happen myself, but I think it would be a phenomenal idea. And art makes everybody happy. So, and it's cathartic. So let's maybe discuss that.
Sure, go ahead.
So, love your idea, and it's happening already. So, planning meeting will be room 10, Alta Vista, on Friday, 2 o'clock. So, if anybody wants to come and contribute their ideas to a concept, Sarah Spinks will be there. Did I say that right? Yeah. And she's actually already working with BVA on art, so it's already, you know, there's momentum.
It's funny how things kind of come together like that, right?
Yeah, it is neat. It just,
What was her name? Emily?
Emily.
Emily.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, and Emily also is the one that drew that beautiful picture. The morning after we heard that we would be able to stay open, and she did that beautiful picture on the board. So came to school in the morning, and there was this visual thing that she created, but basically it said, small campus, big family.
Thank you.
Okay, we have the consent calendar, and we are pulling 14B, 14C, 15B, 15E, 15. We already pulled items, okay, and 15M. That said, all matters listed on the consent calendar are considered by the board to be routine and will be enacted by the board in one motion in the form listed below. There will be no discussions on these items prior to the time of the board vote on the motion unless members of the board and the staff will pull cards to come. Do we approve the rest of the consent calendar, and then we can go to the ones that we pulled? So do we have a motion to approve? Yeah.
Move we approve the consent calendar as amended.
I second it.
Motion by Rich Alderson, second by Debbie Morton. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. 14D.
I pulled 14B because I'm still waiting for the Murray Leadership in Me conference to be approved, and I don't see it on here again this month either.
I'm not the department, but what conference are you looking for, ma'am?
This is the one in Disney, right?
It's in Anaheim, yes. It's the one I brought up the last month too, and Mr. Seitz promised me it would be approved, and it was supposed to be approved, but it's not on this calendar, it's not on here.
We're gonna have the leadership in me. What was the name of the conference again?
I believe it's Leader in Me.
Okay. And do you know which school site?
Murray. Mr. Compton. It was supposed to be held right before the budget, it was supposed to go out the day or two after the budget cut letter came out, notifying everyone that we were cutting budget and hiring be freeze. And the students at Murray earned the right to go to it. And they weren't told until the morning of that it was canceled, because someone thought it was a trip to Disneyland. It wasn't a trip to Disneyland, it was a trip to a conference that they earned the right to go to.
But it had also not been board approved prior to their attempt to go. So that was really the issue for the polling, was that it had not been brought to the board. But I did call after the fact, and I thought it was on the docket to go. So we just need this stuff ahead. We don't know tonight without, that information, because it's not here. We'll have to tell you in the Friday letter, I suppose. We don't know.
Wonderful answer. We don't know.
We don't have a database.
Okay, so anybody want to make a motion to pass 14B, which is approve the out-of-state district travel? I will make the motion to approve that.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
But if this was to Anaheim, this is out of Well,
It's out of district, not out of state.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Reg, did we hear a vote?
I'm sorry, yes.
Okay, 3 yeas and 1 no. Okay, 14C. So going back to that, can we get information on that tomorrow?
Yes.
Okay, C is approve the field trip overnight register.
I pulled that one because there seems to be a lot of money being spent when we are supposed to be in a budget freeze again. So I just need to know, has that been lifted? Are people allowed to do whatever they want again?
Those are paid by the band boosters.
Typically, items that are directly impacting students and for students are approved with a rationale. Is there one that's concerning or one or more that are concerning?
No, I just want to make a point, I guess. I do see that it is paid by the boosters, and I do recognize that. I make a motion to approve the out of the field trip request.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 15B, the POs.
I have a couple of questions about a few of them, Donna. I have the numbers this time, though.
Good, that's gonna help me a whole lot. Go ahead.
25288.
25288. Forward, School Solutions? I can't, that's one I did not check today, but normally it's library-related materials. They either could be things that they need for their scanning machine, labels, but that Follett School Solutions is usually having to do with library materials.
Thank you for that one. 25366.
Oh, yes, I actually marked that one. B&H Photo Video Incorporated for non-capitalized equipment. This is actually coming out of the CTIC grant. It's Mission Vista High School stage tech equipment that they need for their lights and you know, things for the stage performances.
And it's from a grant, you said?
Yes, the CTIC grant.
Is there a way to note that it's from a grant, or no? I just have to ask you?
The query that we have on this doesn't do that. I looked at it when I was going through saying, okay, I'm gonna try to guess what would I ask if I was in your shoes? And that's why I asked, because it was a large amount, and it would be like, you know, there may be things that we can do that and give you some extra information, but this is all done by a query that comes out of the software that we use in the district.
25371. Did you buy a new truck?
We did. We bought a CNS vehicle. They had the money for it in their budget, and they bought a Ford Focus, I believe, Diana, right? Yeah, it's a Ford Focus.
So that came out of CNS?
Yes, ma'am.
Is 25449 for the Budget Advisory Committee?
449.
No, that's leadership assessment, that's,
This Vista High School, that would be the Vista High School purchase order transaction for the selection of the high school principal. That contract that you guys had approved 2 months before.
Was it for 10,000 total, or was it?
Yeah, it was 10,000 total.
25498.
Pearson Education, adult education is a read-write student textbook materials that they use for their high school students' diploma program.
How do you remember all this?
I told you, I'm not kidding. I have it written down here. I'm guessing, I am thinking like, I am trying to think like a board member, and so I'm not kidding, that's what I went down and did.
25533.
ComUSA, materials and supplies, those are radios at Roosevelt Middle School.
They needed to be replaced? Or?
Yes, ma'am. They were saying they were having difficulties with their previous radios and they really needed it for safety concerns.
25574.
Okay, I figured, this one I absolutely knew was coming. American Reading Company. You remember the rains that came in, probably the end of January, 1st of February? There was a leak in this one particular room over at Beauvoir Elementary. And her reading materials were out on her table and we had to replace them.
So it's a replacement?
Yes, ma'am.
For things that were damaged?
Yes.
I make a motion to approve the purchase orders.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 15E.
Gift grants and requests. It's the second reading, and you had asked a question initially.
Right, I was wondering if there was a way to add for large purchases a tax identification number. So if people want to donate something and they want a tax ID number for it, can you put that in there or no?
The reason I don't do that is because our tax ID is your social security number. Think about it that way.
Well, I wasn't going to say a number. I was going to say donations for the purpose of a tax identification number.
I don't understand. I don't know what that means.
Like if you could just tell us.
So if I wanted to donate a piano and it's worth $10,000 and I wanted a tax break on it or a tax
Correct.
refund on it, so I need the tax ID.
So you do not.
No, there is
No.
none.
Well, no, you don't need it. IRS, if you look at your tax form, you do not put the tax ID number of the organization in there. We would give you a letter that actually says that we are a public entity that is a nonprofit. And that's all you need to show if you ever get audited by the IRS for that purpose.
Okay, so there's no, I thought you said there was something about a tax identification number.
What I'm saying is, the only legal entity that can accept a donation is the Vista Unified School District, because we're the only one that has a tax ID number. Individual schools do not. There's just subsets of the district.
Plus, we don't ever value what's given.
Oh, never,
Yeah,
never. You do it.
I make a motion to approve the second reading and adopt the board policy 3290.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and then 15M was contracts. So Donna, this is you again.
I know.
So here's my question, because there were actually 3, but I just pulled the M.
Who seconded that?
Deb and Rich were the 2. So when I went through, was that Martha or was that?
No, I made the motion.
Oh, Martha made the motion. Believe it or not. And Deb seconded. I'm sorry. Okay, so it's, I can tell you, I wrote the name. The particular one, just because it's $500 and some thousand, is to PJHM Architects.
Okay.
And so when I was looking through this, and there were 2 other ones too, but they were smaller, so I'll just ask my question with this. I see that they are being paid from the bond.
Correct.
And can we do that prior to establishing our bond oversight committee?
Yes, we're not paying them yet, because we have no money from the bond yet.
Okay, so what are we doing with
We're
this
saying
approval?
that we've entered into contract, and the architects in question already know this. They know they're getting paid for bond proceeds, but they're gonna be we're hiring them to do one of the projects. I think they're doing, I can't remember.
I think it's
PJHM.
Beaumont.
Beaumont, yes. they're gonna be doing the Beaumont work. And so this will be the cost to do that design work. And what we're saying is we wanna get them at least started, but they know they're not gonna get paid until we do the first issuance, which won't happen until May. And you can still do this as part of the process, and even before the Citizens Bond oversight, because we gotta have people to do the design work.
Okay, so we're okay with that. And then the other question that actually has come up a few times to me, but I don't know how to answer it, is so we have an architect for this, and I'm sure we're gonna have many more of these coming for us to approve with the bond, correct?
Correct.
Where did we get this architect from?
We actually did a solicitation. We actually did that, you guys went through and did that process, I'm trying to think, was it about a year ago? Back in May and June of last year, we hired 5 firms. We did a pool. Alpha Studio Design Group, WLC Architects, PJHM, HED, Sprotty Watson were the architects involved that we previously hired to help us and do some of the preliminary work before we even had a bond, so that we could get started and start thinking about this process. So we hired them to be our pool. And then we narrowed it down and said, these are the projects we're gonna start on, and we feel that you're the best fit for these projects. It was all through a competitive process.
And we'll have another round of that.
Yes, we are in the middle of evaluating another group of architects that we went out and did a second solicitation after we were successful with the bond, and knowing that we were going to be working on this for the next 10 years, that we may need other firms to help us with some of the design work that is going to be going forward.
Okay, so when people ask me, these places that we're choosing, whether they're architects or whatever we need, if they had any influence on our fundraising for the bond, I don't even know how to answer that. Is that allowed? Is it not allowed?
Yes, it is allowed, but if you notice on this contract log, like for example, you look at Alpha Studio Design Group, and they're doing Vista Magnet, because we were gonna remove a relocatable classroom. You see bond measure, LL contributor, we're required to do that because we told the San Diego Taxpayers Association that we were going to make sure that whoever contributed, we'll tell you.
You know what, I read that, but I didn't.
No problem.
The processes for all who deliver services under Measure LL and the prior work are extremely cautiously distributed. Donna believes, and I do as well, that process has to be absolutely crystal clear and clean. And so we have processes that are public, they're fair, they're transparent, people have the opportunity to participate whether or not they contributed to the bond, and we're very careful not to be swayed. And so we're very cautious who's in the room to make the selections, and that they're really thoughtfully done so that nobody can throw stones at our process.
So all that is finished before it comes to us in the board packet?
That's
right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll make a motion to approve 15M contracts.
I second it.
Motion by Rosemary, seconded by Deb. All in favor?
Aye.
Board discussion, right? Scott Bailey, and then Carrie Anderson.
What, 3 minutes here? My name is Scott Bailey. I teach English at RBV, and I'm one of the leads for the 8th period team. Carrie Anderson here and I will be reading an extended statement together. I'd like to open our statement by reading an email I sent out to the RBV staff the day after the board voted 3-2 against funding the 8th period day at RBV and VHS, and then voted in the affirmative to implement in 2020-2021 school year. Here you go. Quote, out of respect for this hardworking staff and before we celebrate a 5-0 vote too much, I would like everyone to consider a few ideas that I will put plainly. Number one, the DO is cutting teachers for the 2019-2020 school year no matter what. So as we celebrate a potential 8-period schedule in 1.5 years, just know that a colleague sitting next to you may be losing his or her job this year because of the board's short-sighted decision. This means that next spring, a new principal will be tasked with trying to rehire those amazing teachers that were removed this year, plus hiring 8 to 10 more. Given this reality, we should temper our excitement out of respect for our colleagues who may be moving to another school. 2, over the last 15 years, our board and DO have consistently written, voted for, and then not honored side letters, MOUs, and general agreements. Voting 5-0 does not mean that they are actually funding an 8-period schedule. Until it is a line item on a budget, it's just talk. Let's play out a plausible scenario. Next fall, the board asks the CFO to recommend how to fund the 8-period schedule. The CFO comes back and says the budget's tight. The board votes again on funding, but decides we should wait another year until they have a better sense of the budget crisis. This process should sound familiar to the VTA membership. 3, another year has drained away with RBV and VHS students put it at a systemic disadvantage to students at Mission Vista High School, neighboring schools, and charters. Would we have had a busy spring? Yes. Would it have been stressful for some people? Yes. But as we see it, this delay has just made the implementation less likely, and if it does go, far more complicated. We guarantee, however, that we will continue to fight for this change in our scheduling and hold the VUSD board and superintendent responsible for their comments. That's the end of the email. Carrie and I are here to begin to fulfill that promise that we made to our friends, colleagues, and RBV stakeholders the day after your vote. We are here to be direct and to be sure that the record is clear from our perspective and experience. The district administration has already begun to lay the groundwork to undercut the implementation of the 8-period day in the 2020-21 school year that I outlined in this email the day after your vote. Tonight, we'd like to focus on the 2020-2021 assumptions budget that Donna Caperton has developed and Dr. Linda Kimball approved. Specifically, we would like to focus on the inflated calculations of the required full-time employees, FTEs, to implement the 8-period schedule. And if you're listening to this statement on video, an FTE is best understood as the cost of one teacher. That's the end of my statement.
Good evening again. Good to see you again. So I'm Carrie Anderson. I teach history at RBV, and I will continue where Scott left off. So looking at the 2021 budget, Donna has assumed that RBV will be cut from 83 FTEs down to 70 FTEs. The assumption that a comprehensive high school could function with 70 FTEs is based on a staffing formula and not on reality. Trimming FTEs to 70 would cut release time for department chairs, IB coordinators, ASB directors, and would ultimately remove electives. This demonstrates a fundamental deficit of understanding of the complicated high-stakes world of high school. More than likely, it will land somewhere between 76 to 80 FTEs to keep a comprehensive high school, specifically RBV, functional. Consider this analogy. Cutting a high school like RBV down to 70 teachers is like pulling a wheel off your car to save money on tires. Sure, you could load up weight on one side for balance so you can drive, but no one in this room would let their own child ride in it. We will absolutely concede that RBV is slightly overstaffed currently, but absolutely not by 13 FTEs. No professional with a functioning understanding of high school would even suggest such a cut. The original FTE number of 70 for the 1920 school year was preposterously low, and our principal once again had to fight to keep Rancho at a functional level. These deep FTE cuts were also more heavily taken by RBV and VHS. This again demonstrates who and where the district likes to invest their money, Mission Vista. One easy way to solve this issue is to leave the staffing at the comprehensive high schools, minus retirements, for the next year. That will provide the foundational base for the 8-period to launch successfully. This, of course, brings the cost back down to around our original number. All this leads back to Dr. Kimball and Donna telling the VUSD board and families
that it will cost 46 FTEs or $5.9 million to implement an 8-period day at RBB and VHS. Because of the inflated assumptions budget, the district administration's numbers are a purposeful deception that inflates the cost of implementation over the course of 2 years. The district has a declining enrollment issue. We've steadily been losing 200 students per year to other schools, but this year we're up to 400 students, and next year is projected to be 619 students. If you do not invest in our schools now and begin retaining these students, your budget issues will continue to grow. 619 students times $10,397 in ADA equals $6,435,743. This change went from a trickle of students to a flow. What is one way to stop this? You invest in an 8-period day to give them more opportunities. So thank you for your time. Please take into account the numbers. Thank you.
Oh, so tonight we're here to talk about the second interim 2018-19 financial report. And in this report, we're going to go over some of the items that we previously talked about. This is our projected financial picture as of January 31st, 2019. We're using information from the governor's budget proposal of what is going on. Will that change? Yes, because we know May revise is just around the corner. We use our local control funding calculator to project revenue, which is adjusted for declining enrollment. And you just heard Carrie mentioned the decline of over 600 students that we're projecting for 1920 and 2021. Multi-year projection is required by AB 1200. It must include current year plus 2 subsequent years. So 2019 and 2020 and 2020 and 2021. We know that our estimates for enrollment, we're estimating is going to be 20,142 students as of October of next year. We expect the following year to be at 19,808. And this is in concurrence with our demographers who've done a 7-year study, which I will be sharing with the board in a Friday letter in the upcoming couple of weeks so that you can see the numbers of students in our district. The board did approve budget reductions of $12.4 million, which we incorporated into the second interim budget report on February 21st. District fiscal team adjusted the multi-year. We will be meeting with the Budget Advisory Committee again on March the 14th to review and identify things to reprioritize as we go forward. We still need $2.3 million in budget solutions, and that's why there's a resolution attached to this item for you to approve, showing your commitment to make those cuts. The multi-year projection for 2021 includes the board-approved 8-period day schedule to be implemented at a cost of approximately $5.9 million. So I'm going to explain that because I think they think it's overinflated. The current formula that we use for high school staffing is what we've used for the last 15 years. It has not changed, has not been updated. And it's all based on what the enrollment is in the school. Mission Vista does get an additional allocation because of the magnet designation, which a previous board had approved and has not been changed or adjusted, so it's still in place. If you just take the difference of what the current staffing formula for a standard 6-period day is and come up with the number of teachers that formula generates, and then you look at what a staffing formula would be for an 8-period day, the difference is the additional teaching positions. Now, it is true that due to PL, each of the high schools had additional staffing that they used for many different reasons. When we came and talked to you about the 8-period day a couple months ago, the differences in those staffing was less than the 5.9. But if you don't have those staff, then what we're looking at is 5.9 for both of the schools for us to add those people, that staff members, to the cost of what's gonna be in 2020. That is what's built in to the budget in 2021. Which also increases the amount of cuts that has to be done for 2020-21. So this cycle is not ending, and I don't suspect it will end for at least another couple of years. So with that said, our projections for 2018-19 is showing deficit spending of $10.7 million. Our ending fund balance would be about 12.5, which is roughly about 4.52. We make our 3% and just a little bit over. I'm going to make a statement here, and everybody's going to probably jump. We have a budget freeze that we kind of have going on in the district. That budget freeze is so that we can hopefully improve the fund balance so that you have cash coming as you're going forward in the next fiscal years. There's going to be, I doubt, and I'm going to go on record saying that we're going to have a $10.7 million deficit. But that is the way we have to project. That is the way the state and the county expect us to do our financial documents. If we don't do it that way, they will make an assumption that we're not doing the right things. But I know we're not going to have a deficit of $10.7 million because of what the superintendent has put into place. 1920, we show that if we make all the cuts that you, the board, have committed to in a resolution, we'll actually have a small little surplus of $377,000. In 2021, we are back to deficit spending again, but each of those 3 years, the way it is now in the projection, we have just at 4.5, 4.9% fund balance. That's not a whole lot, especially in the case of an emergency. So, if you adopt the resolution 1924 identifying the budget solutions in the additional amounts of $2.3 million for 1920 and the $10.9 million in 2021, we will have a positive certification as of for January 31st, 2019.
So is this our trickery? I know you don't like the word, but is this getting us to where we have to go to get the, to get our certification, and then we can go back and say, oh, by the way, it doesn't cost this much for the 8th period or this or that, and we can bring it back in because,
okay, so.
I'm sorry.
No. Okay, it's okay. It's okay. So, Rosemary, Debbie, you were here, and Rich, you were here in 2008, 9, 9, 10, when categorical was still around. And we shifted positions to save positions into categorical programs. Some may say that was trickery, but really it was perfectly legal to do. It is not, it is an accounting mechanism. Okay, I take seriously because it implies that I am doing something wrong, and I'm not.
Oh, I wasn't implying.
Okay, trickery.
I was not implying that at all.
Okay, I will try not to be too sensitive. I get late, I get moody. But the reality is, it is a very legitimate funding shift to do that. And yes, by approving this budget with that funding shift, that gets us to be the positive certification that we can submit to the county.
Now, you did see the part about having to cut 2.3 million right away and another 10 million.
Right,
so this is still a heavy lift ahead, guys.
So that wasn't, I wasn't finished.
Oh, sorry, forgive me.
So the next part of my understanding is, so we have to cut the 2.3 million, which we're gonna have to get together and decide, but you're gonna first go to the budget committee,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
And then we would also have to look at the other 10 million or.
We don't have to do that this year. You just have to do the commitment for 2020-21.
Okay, so we come up with the other 2.3 million and then the money comes in, made revised, and it's not quite what we had thought of, and we do end up with some extra money.
Mm-hmm.
In the past, we have always asked for that to be, when I was over there, we had asked for that to be earmarked instead of it just coming in and then all of a sudden we're hiring other people up top and this and that. I kind of want some, whatever that.
Prioritization, I think, is.
Not just, I want to know that when that money comes in, before it goes anywhere to any new position, anything that we get to discuss, if it's a priority for the students or if it's, you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Did we have a list of things that we wanted to bring back when we had that meeting at the district office?
I also got a wish list too.
Yeah, so there was like a list and a secondary list, and so we would defer to that.
That's also what the budget committee will be discussing as well, was when there's money, in what order to bring things back.
Well, regardless, you, the board, are the one that have to approve budgets. You're the one that approves appropriations for positions, for anything. So we're going to be, those things you will get to see.
Hey, Donna, I want to make sure I understand this. We've identified that all magnet schools get 15% more. But is the 15% in the staffing formula or in the allocation of money, resources for the
We
campus?
convert it to money based on an average teacher cost. But what it is you take their total FTE, let's say Casita, for example, and then
No, let's not take Casita because that's not the one that makes a difference. Let's take
No, it's
Mission
Mission
Vista.
Vista. Okay, so we do their formula based on the 6-period day. And then we take that and multiply it times 0.15, and that gives them the calculation, I think comes out to 8.75, is what they get in money. We convert that FTE times an average teacher cost, and that's what they would get equivalent in money. And they can either use it for people, or they can use it for cash for their program. That's the way it works.
Is there any way, okay, so I know back in the day, magnet schools had money designated to them, but now we just give them that extra money because that's what the board decided? Is that
Yes,
what you said?
remember, if anybody was here when Dr. Vodichka was going through the magnet schools, and when we set up, I think, VITA, he indicated that he shared what the formula was going to be, and that's what we've maintained. I think it was 2014-15 that when that got into place.
So when we're trying to increase all of our schools' programs and things, are we able to relook at that at some point?
Yes, ma'am, you're the board. You can look at anything you wish to.
I have a question about 8-period
Mhm.
that was just brought up. Was there a way to pay for the 8-period out of the blueprint funding?
I mean, not. No, it's not planning. I mean, obviously, no, if, I'm gonna say yes. Again, there's $30 million in the blueprint.
Say that again?
There is $30 million out of essence in the blueprint for supplemental concentration that will be for 1920, okay? We know about 27 million are for things that have already, people like community liaisons and different positions of that sort that are already, that we have to maintain and things of that. That doesn't give a lot of extra money to pay for additional staffing, like the 5.9 for the high school. Again, like we did a funding shift on the other things, we could have done a funding shift if you wanted to for an 8-period day.
You can't. It has to be towards the 5 groups of students. You won't be able to prove that.
We can't talk out from
Okay,
the
so
other
Matt will
side.
can talk to you about, remember, everything that we do in the blueprint must be principally purposed for the benefit of those students. Remember, we're also over 55%. So what that means is we can do a district-wide program as long as it's principally purposed. Those words are principally purposed, and those are key in the definition of what we use.
So the blueprint money for the 8-period day, principally purposed for that group of kids, is pretty much Vista High and Rancho.
A large portion.
Yes, I would say so,
Right.
because they have, if you look at their percentage of free and reduced alone, they're going to be pretty high.
But when both pots of money are essentially spent, the bottom line is the money has to come from one of the pots of money, and so in order to accommodate that, we'll need to make some adjustments, right? So, wherever you take the money, it's still, we
It's a
need the money.
zero-sum
and
game.
We'll just need to make those reductions in order to make it work.
And right now, we're missing, if there's anything that has to do with teachers and things of that sort, we're missing that window of opportunity.
I remember being at a board meeting and asking, is there any other way to fund this? Are there any other pots of money? And your response was no.
That's right.
When it could have been used out of the blueprint money if the stakeholders agreed to put that in there. So why wasn't that brought up then?
Because honestly, Ms. Morton, I did not think about using blueprint dollars at that point. We hadn't discussed any budget reduction solutions, and I thought everything was committed, and then as we've been evolving in this, other things.
And then I had a question regarding the grant. If some of that grant money at Vista High could be allocated to fund the HQ grant. XQ. To fund the 8th period, and we were told that it would have to be, possibly rewritten or modified.
There's certainly, my answer then was, and still is, we absolutely could write it in. The only stipulation is that every year when we submit it, so we're talking about 1920, it has to go through the execute committee and be approved as it relates to the alignment to the original milestones that we wrote the grant for. So I could write it in, absolutely, I could make that happen. Actually, it was one of the elements that we were trying to do, but what I can't promise you is that the execute team would approve it. I can call them and get some feedback from them to see if they would consider that, but keep in mind that one of the purposes of that grant was that there would be a sustainability element after. So I guarantee you they're gonna ask me for verification that once that grant runs out in 2 years, that there would be some element of sustainability to it.
And I point out that they only get $2 million a year.
Wait, we only get $2 million a year, and that's just for Vista High. It would be difficult to spend all that $2 million on that 8th period day. My guess is that they would not approve that because there are other elements, other milestones within the grant. But absolutely, we can try it, and I'm more than happy to give them a call and see what they say.
I'm just trying to make sure.
Yes.
To look at all avenues for funding, that's it.
Okay, Donna, I'm still back to my question. I know we kind of bird walked in another direction, and that's all right. Because I'm still understanding the staffing formula. I just find it curious that we're staffing Mission Vista High School, typically a 4x4 model. Basically, when you staff high schools, you talk about a teacher represents a certain percentage of, and generally it's what the teacher teaches and what the day holds. So at RBV or Vista High, teachers represent 5/6. But at Mission Vista, they represent 3/4, which is a very different fraction. So when you go to do the formula, so you're telling me you don't use that?
We've never used that formula, even before I got in, when they started developing the formula for Mission Vista. They just used the standard 6/5 formula that we've always used. And then they applied a factor, which is the 15 that I told you about, 15%. They never did develop a separate formula for that.
So when you do the FTEs for the high school, do you use the same company that we use for the FTEs for the elementary schools?
The demographers give us, the formulas are just math. It's a straight math calculation, and there is no company that does the staffing formula. The demographers do give us the student enrollment.
And
Yes,
so
enrollment projections.
how are our high school projections? Because we've already had how the elementary projections are always off. So how does the high schools come out through those years of doing it this way?
They're the same thing. There's a lot of variability with the projections because you assume students are going to come back out of their cohorts, like 9th graders going to 10th, so forth and so on. but a lot of them don't. This year, 11th grade made a significant drop, and so did some seniors and 10th grade. We had some really big drops in the student populations at the high schools, more than what we thought would be.
Okay, and I know this is an 8-period day thing, and I know everybody's worried the money's not gonna come through, and numbers keep changing, and this and that. And I actually was talking to some interested parents who would like to put out a survey in the communities of the high school to see how many of the community is interested in the 8-period day, and how many students would that bring back to us for the 8-period day as our 2 high schools. So I said, sure, you want to do that, go ahead. That's a great way. They did other surveys for us, which were very thorough, and reach out to the community. So maybe we can relook at this once we get those results. I know we're doing budget, but this is all part of it. Do we have a motion to approve the second interim? You're on 17A. You're looking for the report on page 159. If you're looking for the agenda item, it's just on page 35. I make a motion to pass the second interim.
And the resolution? You have to approve the resolution too.
Okay, so that $10 million blew me out of the water when I saw the agenda, so I don't know if anybody wants to talk about that. I'll just trust you that we'll do this.
What are employee groups? What do you classify as the employee groups?
Okay, we have obviously the certificated staff, which is managed and by VTA, Vista Teachers Association. We have CSEA 389, which is all the classified employees. We have our non-representative group. That means none of them have any bargaining units, but it's management, supervisors, and confidentials. Those are the employee groups that we have in the district. Am I right, Elaine?
Are the raises figured into the second interim report for all employee groups?
Yes, ma'am, they are.
What raises are figured in for the assistant soup and management?
Just like everybody else, 3.25. They're in the budget because that's the way we do it. It doesn't mean that we're getting them. You obviously have not voted. You haven't given them to us, but we put them in there when we built the second interim.
So if we approve that, we're not approving it?
No, ma'am, you are not. That is a separate, distinct board item that requires specific approval for that part.
How much would the raise for assistant superintendent management be total?
I think it was on the item that was pulled too. I don't know that off the top of my head, but it was on an item about a month ago, and we pulled it. I don't have it right here in front of me. I'm sorry.
Does that also include the 2% increase for assistant soups and management?
That is the step increase that you're talking about? Yes, the step increase from one year to the next year is also incorporated in there, because that is as part of the practice, just like any other group, when there's step increases from one year to the next.
Plus the 3.25.
I'm looking on here for, it says certificated supervisors and administrative salaries, and then it says other certificated salaries. Who is this?
Oh, those would be like your resource teachers? Is that the 1900 object code?
It's 1900.
Yes, ma'am. Those are your other, like your teachers in special assignment, those types of positions. I'm gonna go get my board book, so hold on for a minute.
Yeah, page 158.
Page 158.
Yes, ma'am.
And I asked about the other certificated salaries
Yes.
at a tune of $5 million.
Yes, ma'am. Most of it is, yes, and it's split, I don't have it here in front of me, but yes, the $2 to $5 million. Probably a lot of that's gonna be restricted out of Title I or some of the other programs, but I can't guarantee that. But that is correct. We have that many teachers on special assignment and other types of things in the 1900s, but most of it is teachers on special assignments.
So where is the classified, or where is the management and assistant soup? Are they grouped in with their certificated salaries?
I am not. I am under myself because I'm a classified employee. Along with the supervisors, administrators, I'm in the 2300 under classified salaries. The certificated supervisors, administrative salaries would be all your principals, your assistant principals, the assistant soups of innovation, educational excellence, and the human relations and the superintendent would all be in the certificated supervisors and administrative salaries.
Okay, so then the one underneath it, 2900, who is that? Who does that include?
2900 is your noon duties, your campus assistants, your AM, PM supervisor, and manager.
Okay, then, on the same page at the very bottom, professional consulting services, can we cut that some more, or no?
We're working on the cuts right now. We're trying to make sure that we're not getting rid of anything that's essential for kids, like for a software program, which would be a 5800 object code, which would be in this area. We're looking at all the communications. Actually, I got a lot of suggestions from Ron PA about it, and I talked to him yesterday about it, and I'm doing deep dives on some of these increases, so.
I'm moving on to page 160. What does SERP stand for?
SERP, the Supplemental Employee Retirement Plan.
And that is for the early retirement?
Yes, ma'am.
So I noticed on here that there's a step, a 1.78% for BTA. I'm assuming that's the step and column.
That's not a column, it's just step.
Just the step.
Because the
And
column
then-
increase is 400,000.
And then 0.52% for management. So is that part of the 2%?
Yes, ma'am, that would be included as part of the two, because you take the average of what people have.
So it's never going to be exactly 2%.
Yeah, because some people don't step because of, they get to a certain point, if you're on a classified schedule, for directors, I think they have 25 steps in their salary schedule. You get to 10, you pause until you get to 15, and then you pause and get to 20. And that happens the same on the certificate side of the house too.
Do you have offhand the total number of dollars that is being removed from the blueprint?
No, I do not. I do not want to guess.
Can you get that to us?
Yes, I can.
Because I noticed that it is on this page. Some of it is, 160 is on it. On page 160, some of it is on there.
Yes, ma'am, because these are the assumptions, and we wanted to make sure that we were trying to show you all the information as much as possible.
And then I'm moving on to page 162. It's about the 46 FTEs it's going to take for 8 period. I remember sitting at the board meeting over at the Civic Center, and Chuck was going back and forth with you saying, I'm pretty sure I have these right numbers. I think I have it understood. Donna and I talked about it for several hours, and I'm sure Donna will correct me if I'm wrong.
And I did not.
And you did not, you didn't say anything, and then a few months later, or not even that long, about a month later, the FTEs rose again, and then that amount went from slightly like right around $3 million, and it went up again, and then now we're up at 46 FTEs. So I'm having a very difficult time with transparency when things keep changing and changing and changing, and no one can really explain it for me, and I'm just like so confused. I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you have all this stuff up here. I really envy how you do it, because I wish I could be like that, but I'm just really confused about the 8-period FTEs. I just really am.
Okay, so let me try to see if I can simplify it for you a little bit. So when Chuck was coming from, he was saying, here's what I currently have on staff. And I think Mr. Bailey and Ms. Anderson also mentioned that part of it. I have, I don't know how many, but it's about close to 8. Okay, but that's what it is, okay? But that's funded from a lot of different sources. We have a lot of different programs. We have PL, we had alternative support, we had some Title I, we had some WASP, we had all these different pieces of puzzle that allowed him to have about the 83 positions that he had on campus. Now, Chuck will admit that he was overstaffed, okay, be that as it may. So when we gave you those numbers, when we were talking about the 8-period day, we gave you the differential. Because, okay, if you moved on it, it was going to be the additional cost for those positions is what it would have cost for the upcoming year. And I have that information, and that's what Chuck shared. And we both went and did the same formula, and he agreed with my numbers. Now, if those additional costs aren't there, because we're into a new fiscal year, 1920, you do the formula, you've got to start from ground zero again. And that's where the 46 come into play, because it's
reducing the overstaffing.
Right, exactly. We reduce the overstaffing, we right the ship, so to speak, and then what would take in 2021 to get it back there.
So what are the high schools giving up if you're reducing the overstaffing? Because I know high school, you probably need those staff members there.
We leave that to the principal. He looks and see, okay, where do I have maybe really small class sizes? Maybe, they look to see what's not being offered. Rich could probably give you more information, because sometimes you have to make a determination. I think he made a comment about a foreign language subject where if you only have enough kids to fill 3 classes, you're not going to offer for 5. Because you're not going to have any kids in those other 2 classes. So you have to look at what the offerings are and how many kids you're going to have in there. Would it be great to be able to fully staff it for 5 kids? Great, but we can't sustain that as a possible resource using our existing budget.
Yeah, the staffing challenge at a high school is that, for example, the state requires 4 years of English. So the most number of teachers a high school have are English teachers, because we have to offer every youngster has to take English the whole time. And then it kind of diminishes from there depending on what the subject area is. So the biggest challenge is to make sure you have the appropriate number of teachers in each subject area so you can have the offerings for the students that need to take the classes, particularly required classes. And then the elective classes become another part of that. So the staffing ratio is one in which you typically take the master schedule, and regardless of 6 periods or 8 periods, you build it with some additional sections, and a section is a class. And you build those in until about this time of the year, the high school should be plugging in the existing kids who've made course requests to try to figure out how they're going to build the schedule. And so from that, they can then determine the staffing needs. One of the challenges at high school is if you take a teacher and they're the department chair and you give them a release period, they only teach 4 classes instead of 5, all of a sudden your staffing numbers change in that department. And so it's a real complicated piece to put it all together. The bigger issue for the 8-period day versus 6 is it just requires more teachers because you're going to offer more classes. I mean, it's kind of that simple. And so the amount of the difference is how robust is the program going to be, how many electives are going to be added, that kind of thing. So, that's a part of it. I mean, I've been saying this for the entire time I've been on the board, that we needed to equalize the opportunities between the three high schools. That we had one with 6, with 8 offerings, and we had the other 2 with 6. And so in doing that, we just have to recognize that even if we had just, as a board, just converted RBV and Vista High to say, hey, they're just going to be 4x4s and we're going to go on about our business, it would have cost more money. I mean, it automatically does, because we need more teachers to staff that kind of a model. So, in getting to this, I mean, we're kind of caught here, I think, a little bit in the biggest challenge we're faced with is years 2 and 3, because you're required to budget for those, and you haven't got a clue what you're going to have, and we got this carryover of facing $10 million next year as a budgetary problem, and that's I mean, you guys think it's been tough this year? Wait till next year.
The low-hanging fruit is pretty much gone, and I do like Mrs. Smithfield's suggestion from previous that we need to start earlier. So, while I won't be here, it would be very advantageous to start in September when everybody comes back after the first year. I know nobody wants to hear that at the start of a new school year, but the discussions have to be very robust in going, because you really should have it for your new CBO, the first interim, so that you're not looking at a qualified budget. You have to take positive action, but you got to start in September with those discussions. And we also start having to work on the blueprint and the LCAP at the same time. Good. You done?
So I already moved the motion. I have to add the resolution to the motion now, so also to approve the first interim and the resolution.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed?
No.
Thank you. Okay, so I motioned, Martha second, 3 yeas and 1 no. Okay. 17B is the budget. Do we need a break real quick? Or should we just keep going? Okay. I think this is you, Donna, again.
It's the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee. We had gotten, I think as I said in the agenda item, I'm trying to remember how many I got off the top of my head now after I've been listening to budget numbers for a while. I gotta go back and regroup. So when we did the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee, we sent out the applications. We actually sent them out in December. We did advertising and things of that sort. We had 13 applications. 2 of the applications were from district employees, and what we adopted said that we cannot use district employees on the Citizens Bond Oversight. It is not a best practice from the San Diego Taxpayers Association. And we agreed to those conditions previously. We did, the San Diego Taxpayers Association, they have indicated they have a nominee, but they have not sent in their application yet. So their position is still blank, but they promise that they're not gonna penalize us because we don't have a representative from them. It's not our fault, it's theirs. And then there was one other member, and I'm not gonna go elaborate, but it didn't meet the conditions required by the district, and as such, we accepted all the other members who had submitted applications, and the names that you have and what they're serving in is listed. We have John Aguilera from the Business Organization member, parent or guardian, he's both. Charles Basso, who's a parent or guardian. Thomas Fleming, Senior Citizens Organization member. John Garth Hall, Senior Citizens Organization member. Michael DeLarge is a parent or guardian. Linda Latimer, a parent or guardian. Lindsay Ritchie, parent or guardian, PTA member. Louisa Stafford, parent or guardian, PTA member. Stephen R. Wolf is a parent or guardian. And the goal is the middle of April, we'll have our first meeting with them to go over basic information on the bond, where we are, so forth and so on.
Are those meetings open to the public?
Yes.
I move we approve the bond oversight committee.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Rich made the motion, Deb Morton seconded, and all approved.
Thank you very much.
17C, Lavin Cervantes.
I'm not talking. Okay. I am a parent of a DHH Vista Unified student. I'm here to talk about how the single district SELPA is not a good choice right now. Please postpone this vote until we can get more information so we can make a sound decision to the impact of our children. Given the budget crisis right now, we need more transparency. Is it a good idea to go into something that we don't know will save money? Will it actually cost us money? Are you willing to take the chance? These types of decisions should be made after a complete cost and resource analysis is completed and the district has properly trained staff. I also have several other concerns that I want to share with you. The doctoral degree in audiology is a 4-year program to complete. Clearly, a one-day training for staff will not be acceptable for servicing our students. Furthermore, no one in VUSD is trained to help with DM systems. Just for the record, DM systems are the FM system, microphone system that the students that are hard of hearing wear so that they can hear the teacher right to their hearing. DM systems, hearing aids, etc. Vista currently has 200 pieces of equipment that our audiologists and the audiology aide take care of. They send them in for maintenance each summer, keep up with the ordering and warranties, and also upgrade the latest equipment. The audiology aid is not in Vista's proposal, so we will lose that portion. The audiologist and aide also do acoustic testing of classrooms and functional listening evaluations in the student's classroom to see how they hear in the classroom setting. Special ed department stated the parent forum was an eye-opener. They had no idea what a child who is DHH has to overcome just to hear the teacher in the classroom. Anything from a light flickering, the AC vent, the kids coming up the ramps, the portable classrooms, the child in the classroom playing with the eraser. There are a ton of things a hearing person has no idea about. With NICSI support, if VUSD doesn't have a specific item, we can potentially get a loaner from another district. So if my daughter's DM system needs to go out for repair, we might have to go weeks without one if we go to a SELPA and leave NICSI, while there's 13 other districts that we can borrow a loaner from. So sending it out, she'll be weeks without having that DM system, which is valuable for her education. If we contract an audiologist at .2, that's the district's suggestion, what happens when that audiologist is busy with their own practice? Right now, if we need something, we reach out to our site audiologist and she is right on it. We are a very small community of students. I know to most of you it may not seem like such a big deal to go to a single district SELPA, but to these students it will be. Please keep the students in mind first and foremost.
Lori Dodson.
Hi. It's been a long night, so I'm going to start a little bit towards the end, which is to say that I am pathologically optimistic. I know we're just getting to know each other, but I wanted to frame up my discussion with you with that. It's Dr. Lori Ann Dodson, and I'm the Director of Preventative Services at the Institute for Applied Behavior Analysis. And I have spent over 20 years focused on treatment equity and posts as diverse as being a clinical supervisor for the Compton Drug Courts. I was a vice chair of the Oakland's Mayor Commission for Persons with Disabilities. And most recently, I've accepted a board appointment with Rutgers University for their big data program, with the personal aim of championing the application of big data as it relates to optimal outcomes for children and adults with a wide range of disabilities in educational, residential, and medical settings. The post I'm most proud of, however, is my role as a mom to Atticus, who's a first grader at BAPA, where I'm the co-chair of the intellectual committee for the foundation and the coordinator of BAPA's La Galleria, and a principal fundraiser for the Save Our Steinway initiative. I'm also the parent of Finn, who's a preschooler with very complex developmental and medical challenges, who is a recipient of Home Hospital School through Cal Ave, where she receives general instruction, occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech, DHH, audiology, and visual impairment support in our home. So a wide range of services to which we are incredibly grateful. In my professional practice, I use the VISTA IEP as the exemplar, because I've never seen anything quite so wonderful as she's received. But I'd like to point out too that that was not through my advocacy. That was through the identification of need and the application of resource. Though I generally shy away from credentialing, it might not sound like that, but I generally do, I wanted to make an exception this evening to illustrate a point, which is that despite my personal investment and my active commitment and my business acumen, I still lack sufficient understanding about the impetus and cost benefits to transitioning to a single district CELPA. While I understand far more than most that parents of special needs children are often overextended, and it is more difficult for some to actively participate in problem solving and decision making that's not directly tied to their own child's care, creating accessible avenues for participation is the responsibility of all of us. And as it relates to the dissemination and soliciting input about the single district CELPA plan, despite what I believe is arguably were best efforts, the district has fallen short. The case in point, the most public opportunity for information sharing and exchange regarding the proposal happened less than a month prior to tonight's proposed vote. And while I was impressed by the board's and Rebecca's stamina, it happened after 10 p.m. on a school night. And so the ability for parents to participate in that process, even those who are extremely motivated to participate, was very difficult. Tonight, this item is also number 17. A less than coveted spot for an item that has such far-reaching impact. And I had thought that this would be discussed past my bedtime. I wasn't exactly sure how the process worked, but unless I'm all dreaming, we're all still together. So tonight, what I ask for you is, ask of you is to postpone the single CELPA vote. Not forever, but until which time there's an opportunity for increased scrutiny and input. It also appears that Mr. Vargas is not here this evening, and I would think also with a decision of this magnitude, you would want to have the full board present. I have made specific recommendations regarding parent outreach that I think may prove more successful to garner increased participation, and I've also agreed to assist in an advisory capacity should the decision be made to go forward with a transition.
Are you almost finished? I'm sorry.
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Yes. That is to say, I'm all in. And though I'm always game for course correction if it's needed, I think as a general rule it's best to set sail understanding what barriers are in front of us. I think the P3 discussion today was such a great foreshadowing for this presentation. So lastly, what I am here to say is that I think we need to take the opportunity to get more information so that we can make the best choices. And I think that there are many ways to increase the amount of parent input, and that I'm certainly happy to participate in that process if I am able. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
You're a hard crowd.
It's item 17.
It is item 17, but I really appreciate the input that the families have brought to this discussion. So I know that this is a long evening and this is an important topic, particularly for our department, and I just want to take a moment to thank our parents who hung in there and my department. I keep telling them to go, and they're saying this, so I know this is an important topic for them as well. I know that you've had 2 opportunities, the board has had 2 opportunities. I think for our new board members, I should say 3 opportunities for a board. This is your second for the newer board members. We originally had this discussion in October, and this will be the 3rd time bringing it back for approval. So I would like to open it up to see if there are questions, or would you like me to go back and provide a little bit more information in the summary of the process?
Okay, so I just want to clarify what we talked about earlier, because I did get my answer on break. My question was, does our behavior help come under this, and I was told no, that is totally different. So when we're talking about this, we're not dealing with our interventions with our children that have behaviors, right?
No. To provide, absolutely, yes, you're correct, and to provide clarity, when you think of it from like the buckets of services that we receive currently from the SELPA, if you remember, I said that in the past, we required and utilized our services at a much higher extent. Now, the buckets that we service are low incidence disabilities, our students with visual and hard of hearing, deaf, hard of hearing impairments, our assistive technology specialists, and our professional development. And then the administrative structure would be our office, and then the administrative structure of Nixie.
So it's obvious why it's proposed to save money. But my question to you is, why do you think only 2 school districts in the entire county have chosen to do this? And what do you think are the obstacles for them where they think it's just not viable for their districts?
Great question. And there's 2 components to that. Tonight's vote would be step 1 in a series of steps that are required. One of the hurdles is something called size and scope. So only districts who currently meet the size and scope, which you have to have a continuum of services for pre-K through adult, which we have. The second component of that is you have to have over 30,000 students as part of your ADA. Vista Unified doesn't meet that. That is one of the biggest hurdles as to why you would not have very many single district SELPAs, because you have to meet that hurdle. If approved by the board, the next step is it would go to the county, and then we would then have to make a waiver. We would have to apply for a waiver for the California Department of Education for that size and scope component. So the biggest hurdle is really based on size, and then also taking a look, there were some conversations in the past about previous studies that were completed as part of the ThinkMat studies. Back in 2012, we had our first ThinkMat with regards to this issue, and what it references that at that time, we didn't have the programming or structures in place in terms of policies and procedures of the district. And then we had a follow-up in 2015, which said at that point, substantial growth had been made, and that ThinkMat study did say we had the structures in place to provide those services. I think that, Board Member Alvarado, is probably the biggest, is the size and scope, and also to remember that most districts have not had the history of Vista Unified. We've always been, as a member of Nixie, we've always been one of the largest districts and one of the ones that have the most comprehensive services. In fact, we are the ones that continue to share our programs with other districts. And particularly at California Avenue, the Vista Adult Transition Center, those are 2 of our programs where we take students in from other districts. And then we also have the DHH program at Beaubier, which is currently under the umbrella of Nixie, but we house that and its Nixie employees. And I think that in terms of full transparency, I really want to speak to that. I think one of the conversations is, we've had this discussion, our DHH students, they require they're a small but mighty group, and they require a substantial amount of services for a small number of students. But those services are important.
And we'll be able to take care of all those needs?
We will. I think here's what we need to be very conscious of is the timeline. So taking a look at postponing the vote. Postponing the vote is always an option that I think is available to the board, of course. The one thing that I would ask is that the reason why we first said we're not ready to do this July 1 is that it takes a certain amount of time, first this approval, the county, and then the state. And in order for me to be able to stand here in front of this board and say we're ready to make this happen, we need a year to plan for this. And by following this current timeline, it would provide that time.
How much money will you need for that plan?
How much money? I believe Donna did the fiscal analysis, and I believe you received access to that. So if you remember in our last presentation, if you think about those buckets, the supports that we currently receive from Nixie.
I'm talking about the plan that you would, how much money would you need for the year to restructure the plan? So we'll be paying into Nixie $880,000 for 1920, correct?
No, I would ask, I'm looking over here for Donna.
I'm
but-
I'm digging it out.
She's gonna pull it. That would be the savings if we, that if we remove ourselves from NIXI, the district would save just about $850,000. Our overall contribution to NIXI is it's substantially much higher. Yes. And I'll wait for Donna.
Is the contribution based on enrollment?
It is, it's based on the
And
district's
we're one of the
88.
largest so that's why we pay more than any other district?
Yes, we pay about 20%.
So in 2012, BICMAC came in and they did a report because the district was thinking about going single plan SELPA. And at the time, there was a factor of enrollment, like you said, the size, they would like 30,000. At the time, in 2012, we were at 25,000. And we were losing students to declining enrollment and charter schools in 2012. We are now in 2019. Our enrollment is 20,000. We're still losing students to declining enrollment and charter schools. Donna's projections for enrollment is going down, and we could see low numbers like maybe 18,000 in the next couple of years. So how are you perceiving this to work with decline in enrollment?
I understand your question correctly. It is, how would that impact the application for the single district SELPA with the California Department of Education? That is all transparent information. That's information they would have, and that's what the state would take a look at to see if we would meet the requirements for that waiver.
Are there any other?
So with our enrollment going down, I'm not even sure if this is a question. With our enrollment going down, like she just said, and then you're saying with the application process, but how will we sustain this on our own? Like, so FICMAC came in and I think what they said was you have declining enrollment, we don't recommend this, you can't sustain it. Well, now we're even lower and we're certainly losing more students, so how are we going to sustain it financially with declining enrollment?
So two points to that. The 2012 FICMAT study actually looked at two components. One of them is, do we have you remember going back to the size and the scope? The first question was the scope. And what they were saying in 2012 is we were not prepared because we didn't have the programs, the policies, the procedures. The second was the size, and that remains true today. We don't need the size component of that, but it wouldn't impact sustainability. Because I think what's important to think about from a single district SELPA status, what's important for you to think about is, again, going back to those buckets, regardless of the size of our district, we're still required to meet the needs of our students who are attending our district. Those services have to have a full continuum. And we have those in place to ensure that any student who comes into our district has those services that are available. The addition to the services, the sustainability component for our low incidence disabilities, so access to itinerant staff for DHH, access to the itinerant staff for visually impaired students, all of those staff members that I mentioned previously, those would have to, by law, be included within that single district. Or even if we weren't a district, we still would have to provide those services. And I would also say that it's too difficult to predict the future, right? I can't think out farther than that year to say, but to always know that one of the comments was, how do we share resources as part of a district if we were to become a single district SELPA? And just one point of clarification is, that was really much more profound back in 2012. As we began to kind of reduce the services, and when I say we, I'm saying all the districts within the SELPA, we began to say we have to make some fiscal decisions, and we began to reduce those services. So we began to reduce regional programming. We created our own programming. We began to reduce program specialists. As we reduce those services, we've created structures and systems within our districts. So for example, I received a phone call today from a member district, and the director said, I have a need for a placement in a program in your district. And we talk about openings. And those sharing of resources continue. We pick up the phone, and those sharing of resources continue. And the structures that we have in place for that is through a memorandum of understanding that we put together.
Yeah. I have multiple experiences with this piece. 11 years ago, I was a superintendent in a very small district, and quite honestly, beat my head against the wall. It wasn't Nixie, but it was a different SELPA, but trying to get money for my small district. And now I work I've worked in every district, I think, in the county here. And one of the challenges that I think is expected here is that anytime we look at change and you have families that have youngsters with unique needs, but I want to share another side of this, which I think is a very valuable one, is many times in the work I do now, I sit down with a family and we have to talk about taking their child out of the school they're in because of whatever circumstances aren't working and putting that child in a different school setting. And when we do that, I get tremendous trepidation from parents all the time. They really don't, even if they're unhappy, don't want to leave their local school because it's neighborhood and that part of it. And, for example, in some places, you have to move a youngster to get a CEES program because the school they're in doesn't have one. And it might be in the same district, it might not. And so those are the kinds of things where I think our ability to offer and in-house those specialized kinds of programs that really help those families and can keep them, as part of being part of Vista. If we have those things available within our district, they might need to go to a different school site, but at least they would still be a Vista kid and still be able to go to school here, and that part. So I see that as a fairly large advantage in one sense. And I think we have to be careful or cautious about not having this be all about the money, because this is, of all the budget kinds of things we can talk about, this is about kids and about supports for them. And a couple of people that I have talked to, I've tried to reassure them that the law is still the law. We don't get to not do things because we became into SELPA ourselves and we can say, oh well, now we can't do that because we're our own SELPA. The federal law and the state law still exist, and we still have to meet those requirements of every IEP that we have. So, I think from that standpoint, and given our budgetary piece, I think we, as a board, should keep on top of, and we rely on you, Rebecca, to come to us and make sure that you can talk to us about all the support systems that are in place, and very likely come back, once this is in place, and report back to us on the deaf and hard of hearing program, and how are those families and kids doing, and how are they feeling about this change we're at. My hope is they don't even notice a change. They just keep getting the same services that they had, and they don't know Nixie or whoever, that part. But I just think we've got to be sure we follow up so that people don't feel like, oh my gosh, the district changed and now I'm getting shortchanged, and we don't want to see that happen. So
I'd just like to thank you because you have been very transparent. Your team is wonderful. I've worked with some great people on IEPs for my granddaughter, and it's just been a wonderful experience for my family. So thank you very much.
Thank you for that. It's an incredible team out there. And I would also like to add that, and to kind of build upon the comments that the board members have made. Is my microphone working? Maybe my voice is starting to just fade even more.
You can pick up the mic, it might help.
Yeah. The second component of this approval process is the approval of the Community Advisory Committee. And that, I think, is an exciting opportunity for us to take a look at, just as you said, this is step one, the process. This is just the first step in beginning the planning process. And we have selected a group of parents who represent all age spans and all areas of disabilities, to include those very students who have our low incidence disabilities to be a part of our Community Advisory Committee. This group, so this is not the end and not the last opportunity for our parents to have input in the planning component of this process. This CAC committee will be one that the families come together and continue to have these conversations. And one of the biggest parts, and I really appreciate our parents who said, she's here, she's gonna help, she's accepted the opportunity to be a part of our CAC. And she's offered the support to say, let me help you get out there and touch the hearts and get those parents involved, because we know our families are busy. And I think oftentimes getting an invitation from a parent is much more meaningful than getting an invitation from me. So I just want to let you know that the second component of this approval is to take a look at those CAC representatives that we recommended and have those included in the approval.
What part will the board play in the governance part?
You are an extremely important part of this. That's one that when we talk about the reasons behind it, when we use that term local control and accountability, really what that means is that in the current structure, NICSE, their governance board is one superintendent, Dr. Kimball, and the other 13 superintendents. They meet and make the decisions with regards to programming based on feedback from all of us as directors and our program specialists. But they make the decisions. By becoming a single district SELPA, that board of governance shifts to this board. So we would come together at least as often as we discuss our budget process to include addressing how our students with special needs will be incorporated into that. The Community Advisory Committee will come to the board to share out at least annually on both the development of the district's priorities for special education and then the progress on those priorities. So you'll have more opportunity to hear directly from parents who've said these are the priorities that we believe are important to improve our students with disabilities, their programming, and then they'll report out on our progress to you. So all votes would be in terms of my programming and in terms of fiscal impact of that programming would be here at the board level. The shifts in governance structure would be that I would report directly to the superintendent. The CAC group serves in an advisory capacity to myself, Dr. Kimball, and the board.
And just as a reminder, at this time, there are 14 districts that are represented. Vista being enormous compared to some of them. However, we all have an even vote. So at the present time, we don't have the control we would like over our proportionate share of students. It's a bit frustrating.
So this is a little scary.
It is.
And if we go through with this, we really have to stay close in touch so we can support it all the way through. Like, don't wait till the end of the year to tell us. Like, we have to be on it so we can support it and make it right for the kids.
Thank you for that. I vote. Absolutely. And if I know the actual special education local plan is a very lengthy document and you've had an opportunity to review that. Just to be very, as board member Alderson suggested, included in that special education plan is all the legal implications of becoming a single district SELPA, indicating that we will fulfill our obligations as part of the state federal regulations.
I make a motion to, whatever, 17C, to approve the single district special ed local plan beginning in 2021.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay, I made a motion, Rich Alderson second, 3, 4, and 1 against. Righty. 17D. Approve resolution 1923 to eliminate certain certificated services for the 1920 school year.
Yes, tonight I'm here to seek your approval on resolution 1923 to eliminate one position in the district, certificated position. It's a CTE business teacher for the next school year. It's the only one we have this year. Can you hear me?
I move we approve resolution 1923.
I second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
get those motions down? Okay, we don't have any continuations of items from 5A. Board members' reflections, questions, discussions.
Today was the opening day of the magnet lottery process. Do we have a report on how that's going?
I heard it was great that we had parents there, and they were very much appreciated. And then I heard from a parent that it was about as exciting as watching paint dry. But they got the job done. Because it's computer based. It's not like, you know, a bunch of balls running around and you one pops out. You know, it was not exciting. But my understanding is that the test was accomplished, and they were glad that they had people there and that it felt transparent.
On that note, I do want to apologize on our behalf of the mix-up we had with that process earlier, and we'll look into why that happened, and we will try to fix that so that never happens again. So I do want to apologize on behalf of the district for that. I have a few things. Anybody else?
I do. I have a question. I'm very confused about the magnet application. My understanding is that it used to be 3 pages, and this current application is 13 pages. And I went back and looked at the board minutes, which I was a part of, and this is from December 13, 2018. And I'm going to read it. These minutes were approved. Member Alderson requested that we table this item and create a community task force committee to review over the next year. We have unintended consequences from these magnet schools. Seconded by Member Vargas. Member Vargas thanked the community for their input. Member Morton said that this would be a great way to build trust, respect, and collaboration with the community. Member Alvarado said that it was urgent that we address access issues for all students. Member Smithfield asked if we table this tonight, everything will stay the same for the next school year. Yes, nothing will change for the next school year. Yet the application went from 3 to 13 pages. The access was even harder for people to access. You could not use a cell phone to access the application. You oftentimes needed someone to help you with the application. The lottery process changed as well. So I'm asking, how do we do this when it's been board approved, board directed, that we leave it the same?
The same was referring to the priorities, is how I understand it when you say leave it the same.
I think the only thing that we had asked for to be changed that night was our outreach approach to the community. So if I remember correctly, there was issue because we asked to put out a survey. The survey was like 2 questions long. And then we talked about the outreach. We have to meet to get a hold of all of our families in the district. I asked if the liaisons were involved. They were not involved. Actually, I want to say the parent group ended up putting out a survey to the whole community, which is where we got our feedback. But at that meeting, we were saying everything was going to be left the same. We were just going to make it easier to reach out to the community. And I see what you're saying, Deb. Changing an application from 3 pages to 13 pages is not making it easier for the community, the families we're trying to meet. And we brought that up in the beginning of the process, but it continued at 13 pages. So, yeah, good.
We've heard that feedback for sure. I mean, we were trying to improve the process. How it got to 13 pages is a good question, and we will definitely be simplifying for the coming year. We appreciate that feedback. And point very well taken. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and we will need to discuss that whole thing, the breakdown, and why it happened, and what we need to do. No, so I have a few things. So at the last board meeting, I asked for the information on our principals. How many years of experience, how long have they been in Vista, were they admin outside of the district, and what was their pays. And I had said I would like to see that, to go through it, so we would have it ready to discuss at the April board meeting, and I haven't heard anything. And it's, again, one of those things, please don't wait till the last minute to get that information. I had also asked for a list, I thought I did, maybe I didn't, and if I didn't, I'll ask for that now. A list of all this, who or what positions we give cell phones to in the district. There were some things that came across our impact teachers, directed by the board of what their job descriptions are being asked to do things outside of their job description, which also brings me to the whole piloting issue, which to our last morning, the board directives, last meeting, the board directives were clear, which now that Deb brought up the magnet about leaving it alone. So this all kind of goes to, because I talked about this several times and asked if the board gives direction, how does this work? So the board gave direction, brought it to open session, and it wasn't followed. So I followed up and did my research. That is a violation of the Brown Act. When the school board, okay, for instance, this board directed the piloting to include as many teachers as possible. That next Monday, a form was put out to the teachers to prioritize how they wanted the pilot to be filled. Did they want just 2 teachers from a site? Did they want 4 teachers from a site? The board directed them to use as many teachers. That never should have went out. The other thing was, we are a dual magnet district. We are not one dual magnet school. This board committed to being a dual language district. So when we look at things like curriculum, we are unified, so we have to support that. And we said by literacy programs approved by the state of California. Okay? I just got information today that at the meeting yesterday, neither one of those programs are on the list that are approved by California for biliteracy. Again, not following the directive of the board, which is violating the Brown Act. Ed Code. So my point is, if we're a dual district, which we committed to, we are not divisive. We're unified. So we need to make sure our curriculum is unified and all the schools have the same opportunities and it's equitable. And if that's the board's directive, we have to follow it. Bottom line, there's nothing, no, oh, well, yeah, the board said this, but we're gonna go ahead and do that. And this is something, this is like common practice, because I can go back and probably list 25 things within this past year that I had wanted or we had said, and then people just do it how they want to do it. So I want to address that because that is something we will be addressing further on, is both the pilot, the dual magnet. If we're not going to make that commitment, this adoption would be the first part, then we need to stop saying we have a dual magnet school, because we are not supporting it. We wanted to grow it at all of our other schools, or as many schools as we can, and this is a horrible start to that.
Rosemary, which 2 curriculums?
They decided on American Reading and National Geographic.
Who decided on that?
Yesterday at the ECC committee. So I was told that, so I researched, I did my follow through and ask questions, and I was told that they were told as long as we don't have to adopt according to what's on the state adopted list, as long as it meets the INET scores, which those curriculums do, but they don't have a biliteracy component to that. They might have a bilingual one. So yesterday at their meeting, they talked about this, and for some reason, they're being told by the people in charge that, you know, we have to tell the board it's the teacher's voice that matters. Well, it is, we want the teacher's voice, but the direction of the district is a dual language district. So we don't get to say you get to have the voice and pick over here if the district's going. So we need to decide if we're gonna continue the dual language and do this right as a district, or just say, yeah, go ahead and pilot and adopt what everybody thinks, and it doesn't matter to have that piece. The school that started it, they're getting the fingers pointed out. So when this happened, I specifically said, please do not put 5 publishers up there because it's gonna cause a divisiveness among our members. And it has caused a divisiveness among our members, and I say that's purposefully, because you have all the teachers now pointing the fingers at our dual language teachers that are doing it now, saying you're making us have to pilot these, and we want to pilot our favorites. We have impact teachers on there that aren't teaching full-time classrooms, but are kind of trying to tell everybody to, oh, you have to pick this publisher. We're about dual language now.
So I guess my thinking about this is that sometimes we'll have conversations or comments at board meetings, and things are stated by a board member. And what I need to be doing is saying, let's bring that back and have a conversation so that we can get a concurrence of the board. I'm not arguing your point because I wasn't at that meeting yesterday and Matt Stites is not present and I don't know what happened. So I'm not talking about the specifics of that. However, I don't believe, if my memory serves me, that this board has voted to tell the district how to pilot. And if you intend to do that, we ought to have the conversation and have you really be clear about the direction you're going.
Okay, let's just stop right there. At the last meeting when we talked about this, and I asked for this to be an open session, which it really shouldn't have been because we should have just kind of went with what we went. I sat here, right here, Linda, and I'm hoping it's on that live stream. And I said to you, do we have to vote on this, or because the 4 of us agree, it can be a board directive? And you said to me, it's a board directive. So we said, okay, we are directing you to do this. And now tonight, you're saying we had to vote on it when you specifically said we didn't have to vote on it at that way.
I have the minutes here that we just approved that has the information in it. Let me see where it starts. Member Alvarado asked about ARC. Do they have any Spanish components? She stated benchmarks is not great. It's hard to get students motivated about reading. President Smithfield said teachers like it. We need to look at something that offers biliteracy. Member Morton agrees with President Smithfield. We need more people to pilot. Alderson asked if teachers volunteered. Site stated principals find the volunteers. So it says right here that we agree that it should be a biliteracy program, a biliteracy. That's what we agreed on, and it's in the minutes.
So the fact that somebody's gonna say, well, the board said this last night, but I'm gonna ask you guys priority.
Okay, I'll find out what happened at the meeting, and yes, I agree, it needs to be a curriculum that can be used for dual immersion. I understand the concern. It's difficult to track these conversations when a board member, I just think we need to be clear about it.
It wasn't a board member. I know you like to tell me, Rosemary, you're just one board member, but I brought it to open session for that very reason, and we had 4 of us agree on it that night on both of those issues. So it never should even be up again for this discussion. And so the second piece to that is, let's understand how this whole public school system works. The public school system has a school board, and the school board has the right to the purse strings, the curriculum. And so when we're sitting here and saying this, you cannot, by ed code, just go back and do something else, because that's a violation. So we're gonna have to decide what we will do when people decide to violate the ed code.
Can I ask a question here? I'm curious about this biliteracy piece because I made no comments about biliteracy from that standpoint. So, I'll ask a question about the adoption, but my question is, so the intent, Rosemary, is that every elementary school in the district is going to have biliteracy curriculum, and that the expectation is it would get used then?
Okay, Rich, because you were supposed to be on this dual immersion committee with me. And as we worked through the process with the county and the district and the board, we all came to the commitment that we are a dual language district. We were starting with Grapevine, and we were going to get as many schools to jump on board. So maybe Alamosa wants to do a dual immersion with English and Mandarin, or Beaumont says, you know what, we have a need for it at our school. So we were going, our plan was to get it as many schools. The piloting English language arts is an English pilot with the biliteracy piece. So we can choose, or let them choose, to just go and get one of these National Geographic or ARC and forget the dual language piece in our district.
Rosemary, that was not my question. I'm not making a statement. I'm asking you a question. Is that the intent? Okay, is that the intent that we would do that in all those? Because if that's the adoption process, I'm just asking the question that we've had one school step forward and want to do this. I'm not sure how many others have an interest in that regard, but it seems that if we purchase this biliteracy curriculum, and again, I'm not an elementary person, so I'm not proposing one or the other. I'm just asking the question: is the intent then? Because it seems that would have been the selections would have been just that.
Well, that's what we had asked them to do.
Okay. And so then I heard. Let me finish. And I heard you say that there was some conflict among teachers because some teachers were upset with the Grapevine folks because of the biliteracy element that was coming forward, and they were going to have to use that. Is that what you said?
Okay, so I'm going to go back to your first question. It is a language arts program, complete this time, and it's an English language arts program.
I understand.
But it also has that other piece. So it's not like you can't use it at a school that's not doing the dual language. It still teaches our kids what we need
Okay,
to do.
again, mine was not a statement, mine was a question.
No, I know, I'm answering your question.
So the other
I thought
question though
that's
is you
what
said
asked
that now you've got teachers that are upset at the folks at Grapevine.
Because of the way the pilot went out. If they had just went in and said, okay, here's what the board says we need to do because we're a dual language district and this is how it's gonna be, there wouldn't have been any of this divisiveness or any of this drama, because it never would have been the dual language programs versus the programs that don't have any of that component to it.
I also want to finish reading part of the minutes that are on page 54 for those of you that have a board packet. President Smithfield feels the district has had too many years of not having continuity with curriculum. Dr. Seitz stated that we are going to stay with biliteracy. So you have an assistant superintendent saying we're staying with biliteracy, and then a group of people deciding they're not going to do it.
We will definitely look into this. Thank you.
Anything else?
Yes, I'd like to end on a very positive note. I know that made some of you very happy.
No, so I just need to tell you guys, Cipriano and I are working on the governance handbook. We'll bring it to you April and to be approved in May. Thank you.
That's positive. Read Across America was wonderful. I got to go to lots of schools and read with kids, and it was great to go out and visit the schools. I love that time of year, and I really appreciate all that the sites did for Read Across America. What a great example of Vista we are for doing that.
Dr. Kimball, I wanted to say thank you for your work with North Coast Church, getting all those wonderful instruments. I'm really excited for the kids. I'm excited for the community, and I really thought that brought us together this past Saturday, having all those organizations. So I just wanted to give you thanks for that.
That was awesome. I agree. Thank you for that. And I can't wait to see their face.